Recording in progress. Council. I'll try that again with a speaker microphone. We will now begin the Richmond City Council special meeting concerning the Veolia Water North American staff report. We begin with its Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, roll call.
Councilmember Bonner.
Here.
Councilmember Robinson.
Here.
Councilmember Willis.
Here.
Councilmember Zepeda.
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Jimenez and Vice Mayor McLaughlin are absent. Councilmember Zepeda, did I call you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Here.
Sorry.
All right. Do we have a statement of conflict of interest? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is agenda review, and I suppose there needs no review since we only have one item. So we'll move on to new business. Would you read that into the record, please?
Item F1 is to receive a presentation from Veolia Water North America regarding the hydrogen sulfide odors that were emitted from the Richmond wastewater treatment plant December 4 through the 6th of 2023, and provide direction to city staff.
All right. So,
Good evening, Mayor Martinez and members of the City Council. Thank you for calling this special meeting due to the circumstances that have recently transpired in our community. We appreciate the attention that you've been giving this matter, considering it's been very disconcerting for Richmond residents. This evening, in addition to having city staff present, which include Daniel Chavarria, Public Works Director, our Deputy Public Works Director, Robert Armijo, and Mary Phelps, Project Manager that oversees the Veolia wastewater contract. We also have representatives from Veolia and BACMed, the Bay Area Quality Management District, with us this evening that will also provide information. KCRT, can you please put up the PowerPoint? And I would like to hand it off to Public Works to start. Immediately thereafter, Veolia is scheduled to provide their presentation, and then BACMed directly thereafter. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Martinez, City Council members. For the record, my name is Daniel Chavarria, I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Richmond. As City Manager Shasta Carroll mentioned, with me tonight is Deputy Director of Public Works and City Engineer, Mr. Robert Armijo, and Project Manager for the Water Resource Recovery Division, Mrs. Mary Phelps. We're going to make some introductory slides before handing the presentation to Veolia, and Mary will present these next slides. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mary Phelps, Project Manager for the Water Resource Recovery Division. Basically, the order of speakers tonight will be the City of Richmond, next will be Veolia Water North America, and then last but not least, Bay Area Air Quality Management District, or as we refer to them, BACMed. Next slide. So basically, the agencies that have regulatory oversight of the Richmond wastewater treatment plant are the California State Water Resources Control Board, which is governed by the local region, which is San Francisco, the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as EPA, which is Region 9, Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and of course the City of Richmond. Next slide. So this is a map basically of the different sewer districts within the City of Richmond. You'll notice the dark blue is the Richmond Municipal Sewer District, the purple is West County Wastewater District, and the yellow is Stige Sewer District. So over the areas that Veolia is responsible for, the sewer collection system falls within the blue area, but the stormwater section falls within the dark blue outline, which is the entire City of Richmond boundary. Next slide. So as far as Veolia's contract history, for those of you that are new to the City Council, May 15th, 2002, City Council awarded a contract to US Filter, which is now Veolia, for the operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant. In September 7th, 2004, City Council amended that contract and awarded to US Filter, now Veolia, for the operation and maintenance of the Richmond collections, which is stormwater and sanitary sewer collection systems. April 17th, 2018, the City Council adopted contract number 5. There's been other amendments in between, which we won't go into details this evening, to Veolia to include Baykeeper settlement agreement items and to extend the contract to May 15th, 2027. Next slide, please. So the summary of the recent events, which brings us here tonight, is the level of hydrogen sulfide, or as what we refer to as H2S, alerts that came from the treatment plant starting on December 4th and continuing through to December 6th. The first level came at 5 o'clock p.m. per our meters that we have at the north and south end of the treatment plant, which is monitored by Sonoma Technologies, a consultant on contract, and was alerted via email. I was out sick that day, so, oh, I'm sorry. Question?
Could you speak just a bit slower?
Oh, sorry. I
Thank
do have a
you
tendency to
very
speak
much.
fast.
Yeah,
My
like
apologies.
10%
Okay,
slower.
I will slow down. Okay, so the first level of alerts that we got occurred on December 4th at 5 o'clock p.m., and that was via email notification. The website that we have is monitored and maintained by Sonoma Technologies, and there is a link farther in on the slides that any city, any resident, any public official can go to and register at this website, and you will also get the same email alerts. Now, what happens is you get the first alert when when the alarm exceeds 60 parts per billion. That was the level that was established by Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Then you will continue to get readings. They take readings every 5 minutes. You will continue to get readings until it drops below the 60 parts per billion. Then you will no longer get alerts until the next excursion above 60 occurs. So you will not continuously get notifications, but you will see a graph, which I'll show later on in the slides, of what the graphs look like. Starting on December 5th, there were numerous complaints. Here you will see, okay, go back. We did notify Veolia that the morning of December 5th, via email inquiring as to what they plan to do to abate these excursions. We did not receive a response until I physically called Mr. Anderson, also known as Monty Dill, at 5:24 Tuesday evening, December 5th. He provided a response, and I asked him to provide it in writing to city staff. He said we would have the response by 6 o'clock. We actually got it about 6:30. I forwarded it to Shasa, who then provided it to council members Zepeda, who then read it into the record that evening as part of city council reports. Hydrogen sulfide alerts did continue, and the last alert came until 3:45 Wednesday morning, December 6th. During this time, from December 4th through December 6th, there were more than 50 alerts that exceeded the 60 parts per billion, some of them as high as 345 parts per billion. And that's based on the meters that we have either at the north end or the south end. Next slide. This is the graph that I was able to download, and there is the website down at the bottom of this page. If you click on this from the presentation, you'll be able to download the information or register via email. So as you can see, the spikes that occur, the red line that goes across this presentation here at this graph, that's the 60 parts per billion. That's our baseline that we occur. Most of them up until the 5 o'clock point on December 4th are well below the 60 parts per billion. But as you can see, starting at 5 o'clock p.m., they start to spike. And they continue, and then they start to drop the next morning. It continues on to the next page. They do drop below, but then they spike again throughout the day. Next slide. And this is December 6th. So we finally, the last one, as you can see, occurred just above 60 parts per billion at approximately 3:45 a.m. Next slide. Veolia will now present regarding their actions and what they did to abate the issues. Are there any questions at this point for city staff?
Can I ask?
Councilmember Robinson?
So just quickly, you mentioned that we have meters on site that are run by consultants.
Correct.
Can you just briefly describe that system? Because I don't think that people are aware that we have an independent meter monitoring system.
Certainly. Sonoma Technologies was the consultant that won the lowest bid several years ago. I don't know if some of you recall when the digesters caused problems at the treatment plant several years ago, and the air district required us to monitor the air at the treatment plant. we put out an RFP, and Sonoma Technologies was the lowest bidder. So they've been monitoring consecutively for probably the past 8 years regarding H2S. We installed a meter at the north end and at the south end of the treatment plant to monitor H2S. We wanted to make sure we could get detectable levels that were low enough to where it would be informative to the public, not to cause health issues. So we found out that Sonoma Technologies employed Jerome meters, which gets down to a level of like 20 parts per billion, which is extremely low considering the threshold based on NIOSH and OSHA. And they monitor, they take a reading every 5 minutes. That's what we programmed. We had considered taking the readings every minute, but that would probably have required like twice the price of the contract because of the data that it would generate. So you may get a high reading, and then 5 minutes later you get a super low reading, and that's because it's only taking a reading every 5 minutes. It's not reading consecutively. It's only taking a reading, a grab sample, every 5 minutes. So it's just a minute in time that it takes a reading. It's not consecutively, that it's just a continuous meter. I wanted to make that perfectly clear. Does that explain?
Yeah, thank you.
Industry standard is parts per million. Are you sure it's parts per billion? And if so, why is it so low?
That was established by Bay Area Air Quality. And that was based on, like I said, the notice of violation that we got when the digester covers were torn. I believe it was back in 2008. We had issues with our digester covers. That is no longer a problem, but Bay Area Air Quality was very concerned because we had, I don't know if you recall, but we had several people come to the city council meeting. Children were getting sick at Washington Elementary School. People were reporting nausea and headaches from the Point Richmond, that we had to do something to monitor the air at the treatment plant. So we hired an industrial hygienist at that point to check the air, and then we put out an RFP for, continuous monitoring. And the level was set by Bay Area Air Quality and the Contra Costa County Health.
So, okay, I guess that's a question I'll have to ask BACMed, because like I said, the industry standard is parts per million.
Well, it's not necessarily the industry standard. That's what OSHA sets as far as hazardous levels. When you say industry standard, there's industry standards for exposure to employees. And that's not what we're setting here. We're setting basically public nuisance monitoring. As far as what OSHA sets it for, if you're working in a chemical plant or something like that, there's what they call permissible exposure limits. We're not dealing with permissible exposure limits. This is not an industry that we're exposing the public to. The public should not be exposed to permissible exposure limits. I mean, they're not working in a chemical plant. That's something that an employee working at a chemical plant would have to deal with engineering controls, so on and so forth. We're basically monitoring at much lower levels to ensure that the public is safe based on the Health and Safety Code 41700, which basically states that you are not supposed to emit any air contaminants or hazards that cause a nuisance or discomfort to the public.
Okay, well, once again, I'll say that if we did use industry standard, then we wouldn't be having the public complaining of exactly what you said, that we should be preventing them from experiencing.
Well, it would be actually worse because parts per billion are much lower than parts per million. If we were to monitor in parts per million, the levels would be much higher and the odors would be much more extreme.
Okay, so
if you were to take parts per billion and convert them to parts per million, 320 parts per billion to convert it to parts per million is 0.320. So when you take that and convert it to parts per million, which is what you're trying to compare by OSHA standards, you have to divide by 1,000 because that's the conversion factor to get from parts per million to parts per billion.
you would be multiplying if you're going from...
No, parts per billion is lower than parts per million. So when you want to convert parts per million to parts per billion, you would basically be dividing because it's much lower.
Okay. I'll do the math in my head while we
Sure.
move on. Sorry.
It's a little confusing, I
Yeah.
understand.
Councilmember Bana.
Thank you for the good presentation, good information. I missed a slide on the regulatory agencies. It went by too fast, so I'd like to take a look at it, if possible, please. And also, I'd like to know how to enroll in the warning system. I don't live in the area, but as a council member, I would love to receive the warnings to see what's going on. So if you could provide the information for the public also, how to enroll in the alert system.
For registering for the H2S alerts?
For anything from Veolia or Chevron.
I'm not sure I understand the question, ma'am.
Mary, may I make a suggestion through the mayor as chair?
You may.
So Mary, when the other presenters are going forward, we can probably work with KCRT to create a draft slide,
Okay.
just showing people how to sign up online.
I can go back.
And if it's not completed prior to the meeting, we can email it and put it on the city's website.
Thank you.
Thank
So-
you.
But I would appreciate that. The sensors on the north and south, how many sensors are at each location?
There's one sensor at each location, 1 meter at each location.
Okay, thank you. And also thank you for inviting Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Are they here just to listen or answer questions or?
I'll defer to city
Yeah,
manager.
after this information is provided by city staff, then Veolia will present, and then BACMed has some talking points that they'd like to walk through with us.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Yes. Councilmember Cepeda and then Councilmember Willis.
I'm sorry, I asked for that slide, but I didn't get
Okay,
it.
go ahead, finish.
The slide about regulatory agency, if they could show it, if KCRT could show it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, great segue, because my question is in regards to the regulatory agencies as well. Mary, does the county environmental health department have any jurisdiction or any say over what's happening with our different businesses around Richmond, especially with Veolia?
County health gets involved when it involves, nuisances to the public. Most of them come from the BACMed. So what basically their NOVs that have been based on in the past have been based on health and safety code. So that's what it's based on, is health and safety code.
So when-
Mary, can you indicate what is an NOV for members of the public,
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry, a notice of violation. My apologies. My
Thank you.
business, I speak in acronyms, and I assume everybody speaks my language. A notice of violation is an NOV. So when a notice of violation is issued for a nuisance odor, it falls under Health and Safety Code 41700.
So I just want to understand the process. So the notice of violation is issued potentially days later?
Usually, and Bachman can explain this probably in more detail, but they perform the investigation, and depending on their findings, they may or may not issue a notice of violation.
Thank you. Now, for the parts per million or billion, I think it's billion, I'm trying to understand, again, the process here. The alerts go out, over 60 parts per billion,
Yes,
the alarm goes out.
yes,
We received notifications almost as high as 300,
yes.
right? And my best friend, Google, says that over 100 is a health impact. Now,
The
Google may be
standard that
wrong.
was set by BACMed was 60. That was the level that was set for us to set our meters at.
So that's when we set the meters at, but when does it become a hazard to the community, especially those that live right next door?
County Health has informed us that anything over 100
Anything over 100?
can
So-
be a
Yes.
nuisance.
If I may, through the chair, Councilmember Cepeda, that's a great question. Potentially, we can confer with BACMed when they're presenting on that specific instance, since they're one of the regulatory agencies, please.
Perfect. And what I'm getting at with that, I'm trying to figure out, so if over 60 or over 100, is it just a question, if we should also be asking the county as one of the oversight agencies to opining in the future, or to getting more involved? Because if this is a hazard, it shouldn't be getting involved 2-3 days later. I feel like it should be getting involved a little more immediate.
That would probably be a question for BACMed.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bay Area Air Quality.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask them that question then. And then my last question, we only have 2 monitors. Is there a chance to get more?
We could, yes, if we amend the contract, we could have more meters installed, yes.
And the contract is with who?
Sonoma Technologies,
Okay,
and the
so-
contract's with the city.
Okay, so
The
we
city
just,
holds that contract.
that would just be a simple ask? We want to
Yes.
have more? What is
Yes.
your recommended amount of monitors? If you can have your exact number, your perfect number, Mary. Now, we're broke sometimes, so don't go crazy here, but.
I would like to see 2 more installed on the east and west. I think that would cover all our bases,
So 2 more.
yes.
Thank you. All right, no more questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Willis.
Thank you. outside of the emails I know we all got from residents about impacts and then the calls that Bachman had received, which I'll ask him about later, what type of calls of complaints that our city staff received related to those 2 days, and what were some of the impacts that residents say they were experiencing if staff received any calls?
I received a few calls from residents that know me personally that wanted to know what's going on at the plant. It stinks. You know, what are they doing at the plant? There seems to be a problem. These are, usual residents that I know just from working at the plant, my years with the city, so on and so forth. Also, I got emails from residents that know me from working at the plant. What's going on at the plant? Is there anything we should be aware of? I did not count the number that I received. They were just usual residents. And then I saw some postings on some of the Facebook pages that we monitor that said, what's going on at the plant? It seems to stink. Is it Chevron or is it the plant?
Did any of the communications that you received, like we received, did they illustrate any impacts people were experiencing because of the stench, or was it just general inquiries about what was going on and where was it coming from?
There were a few phone calls that I got that people complained that when they opened their doors, it smelled like a sewer, and a lot more graphic than that I won't repeat in this forum, and that it caused them to have headaches. So that's basically it. And I said that we alerted Veolia to the issue and that they were addressing it.
Okay. All right, that's all for now. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Cepeda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mary, we know that this is not the first time, and hopefully will be the last. We're working towards the last here. In the past, can you give us an example of what has it looked like, both in terms of how many alarms have gone off, but also communication? All right, to me, what the straw that broke the camel's back was the lack of proper communication and just timely communication. So can you tell us in the past, what has been your experience? So that way, I want to be able to use today as an opportunity to learn, because Veolia is the company that we contract with currently. So we want to make sure that we learn together. So from the past experiences, what can we improve on? Or what has been your experience in the past in terms of communication when the alarms have gone off, and about how many alarms usually have gone off?
Personally, I can speak to the fact that when I get the email alarm, I immediately forward it to Veolia staff and say, what are you doing to investigate this and how are you going to abate it? And I would say 90+%, I get a response immediately. It was just this last time that there was a severe lack of response, and I did not understand why. And that's why I think we're here tonight. Most occasions, it's usually something going on at the plant. A piece of equipment has gone down. They're taking a piece of equipment out of service or something of that nature. I will say that they have tried to be responsive. It's not that they can always control the odors, but in most cases prior to this incident, they've been fairly responsive.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Any other questions? If not, then I would like to remind the audience and people who want to speak that at the time that public speaking begins, we will stop taking cards. So if you do want to speak, now is the time to call in or to sign your card. All right. So then we'll move on to the next presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Martinez and members of City Council. For the record, my name is Robert Armijo. I'm the Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer. And I have with me right now today CV is the nickname that we affectionately call him by, who's with the CPM branch of Veolia, and we have Melissa Sandvold. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Did I get it right? Okay. Who is the vice president of, I'm sorry, which?
It's the regional vice president for Veolia,
Okay.
overseeing Richmond.
And so they will be providing their presentation on Veolia tonight. So thanks for that.
Okay. Honorable Mayor, esteemed council, first, I want to thank you for your time tonight. I do appreciate how busy everyone is, especially this time of year. As Robert said, my name is Melissa Samvold. I am a regional vice president representing Veolia. I oversee the operations for the Richmond facility. I'm here tonight to assure you that we have heard your concerns. We want to dispel any doubt that we have taken this matter seriously. We know the odors and the communication difficulties this last week were a burden on our neighbors. I regret the impacts that these have created for them and all of the citizens of Richmond. Our team is committed to doing better. As part of that, our team has already started making changes. We've amended our communication strategy, construction reviews to reflect mitigation planning for potential odor-causing activities. We've established a relationship with the city's new emergency services manager, Richard Diaz. Robert was with us on Friday. We've established that relationship. We're talking about activities to improve that communication, to get those communications out to the community. We retrained our staff on expectations, standard operating procedures surrounding these activities, what this needs to be, required notifications to provide as much advance notice as possible for any of these activities. We are responsible for the previously made promise to Councilman Zepeda. We talked about providing notice. We talked about all of these activities that could create these odors and having a higher probability of some of these odors exceeding the fence line. We did not live up to that promise. Unfortunately, we did not anticipate in this instance in detail the ongoing construction activities and those impacts on odor release, nor did we plan for the compounding effects of multiple systems being down at the same time. As a result, and as previously stated, we have started making changes. We've retrained our staff. We've reviewed our construction activities as well as normal operations and are in the process of creating detailed standard operating procedures and finalization of a full investigation of the conditions at the site last week that created this matter. I'm going to turn it over to CV to provide some details and photographs to help better understand the enormity and also what's been happening with the city at the facility under the $42 million rehabilitation project, what the conditions were that occurred last week that exacerbated the odors. CV?
Good evening, Council. My name is CV, for the record. My full name is Chandrasekhar Venkatraman. It's a lot of name, so I just go by CV. I oversee the capital program management for US West, which includes Richmond. And I'm overseeing the plant upgrades and the $42 million upgrades to the grid and aeration system happening in our city's plant right now as we speak, which we are racing to finish. In coordination with the city, the regulatory agencies and Veolia, the construction crew.
Excuse me?
Just a bit louder if possible, please. I don't know
Yes.
if it's KCRT or you.
No, absolutely. Is this better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. So I'll just start again. So for the record, my name is Chandrasekhar Venkatraman. There's a lot of name, so I go by CV. I oversee the capital program management, which is all the big complex engineering and construction projects in the western region of the US, including Richmond. I'm also supporting the $42 million upgrades, which is happening in our Richmond wastewater facility right now as we speak. So in coordination with the city, the regulatory agencies, and Veolia, the construction crews schedules the necessary tasks to complete the projects with the best available construction window in mind in order to complete the project before the heavy rains. We were forecasting heavy rains on December the 6th. So there were several critical activities that we were trying to get ahead of the rains and complete, and provide the most access to capacity so that we ensure compliance of the facility. Since we are doing construction in a fully operating facility where we get 7 million gallons of wastewater coming in every single day, there are some construction, so we are always very cognizant of the construction windows available. But unfortunately, along with the planned activity over the 2-day period from Monday the 4th through Tuesday, December 5th, additional factors compounded the odor production at the site. As a result, the 2 odor sensors at the fence line indicated above typical levels of hydrogen sulfide. Beginning on Monday evening, at around the same time, we began receiving odor complaints at the site. The planned activities included removal of an existing but obsolete air exhaust fan, which was replaced with a new and more efficient and powerful fan. This activity created a window of time where influent odors were only being evacuated with smaller fans that, in hindsight, were insufficiently sized for the tank. During that time, the crews were also draining a secondary clarifier, which is a large open tank at the end of the wastewater process. This is to assist with the tie-in of new piping to connect the existing assets with the odor control. The existing assets with the newly installed equipment at the site. Although our crews flushed this tank with chlorinated water to assist with odor control, this tank holds 1 million gallons of wastewater. So the draining process itself approximately takes about 8 hours for it to fully drain. And in this process, it also exposes the settled solids, which can give off odors. Now, normally, draining a secondary process tank would not negatively impact odor production. But the third and unexpected factor was an electrical brownout on Monday, which coincided with all the activities that we were performing. This is on the PG&E service line coming into the plant. Now, this brownout, it effectively shut down the aeration blowers at the site and impacted some of the controls at the facility, which heightened the opportunity for odors to leave the site by not providing sufficient fresh air circulation to keep the process fresh. Now, in the future, Veolia will work more closely with the contractors to factor in outside influences and provide advance notice to the community on planned events that could have a higher risk of odor production. We, on behalf of the entire team, are terribly sorry for the impacts to the citizens of Richmond. I would like to walk you through some slides which show the work that is going on. If we can go 2 slides back. So what this shows is the green portion on the left-hand side. That is a part of the old obsolete odor control equipment that was existing in the plant from several years ago. This is one of the reasons why the whole $42 million investment in the plant was undertaken to help bring the plant up to current, operating standards and as well as address odor issues. What you see on the right-hand side is a temporary air scrubber. So basically the foul air, as we call it, which is the air containing the odor, it goes through this filter, and then when it is discharged, it's kind of scrubbed, it's cleaned by biological process. Next slide, please. So you'll see that the old blower was removed, and the big new air scrubber that you see being lowered by the crane it's being replaced with this new scrubber that's going in. And you'll notice that it's going in the same exact spot. So we had to take out the existing odor scrubber from operation, cut those pipes, and use a crane to hoist the new equipment in that same exact spot and establish the tie-ins. And you'll see we've removed and set aside the old fan in this case. Next slide, please. So it just shows that there is another pipe, if you notice, on top, which is now coming in because there are some heavy piping modifications which had to be done. But in order to even start that work, we had to take out the existing equipment. But as soon as it was taken out, we immediately jumped in, started connecting all the new piping in its place, dropped the new blower, and this person, and we are bringing it back into operations. This is what was happening in the plant at that point in time when the complaints of odors were reported. Next slide, please. And this is just an aerial representation of the secondary clarifier that I spoke about, which contains 1 million gallons of water. So what you see on the lower one, which is kind of appears on the bottom right-hand side. So that tank was empty initially. So after we finished constructing the new infrastructure, we had to install a pipe connecting to that clarifier. Now, as soon as that was accomplished, we drained the one on top of it, which is on the right-hand side top. So we drained that clarifier so that we could do the same tie-in of the pipe to this clarifier. This is where we drained over 1 million gallons that it was holding. And as soon as this is back in service, there is another clarifier even above this, which is not shown in this picture. We'll be taking that clarifier down and connecting the pipe to it. Now, there is no way of accomplishing that work without completely draining the clarifier, only because of the backflow, otherwise it would cause. And as soon as it was possible that the levels in the clarifier fell low enough, we immediately started adding bleach solution to kind of keep a control on the odors. Next slide, please. So this is what we have from the OSHA website. As you had said, the reported concentrations was at about 440 parts per billion. And this is by no means trying to downplay or what happened in the plant. I mean, I deeply, deeply regret the odors issue, but we are in the middle of construction when these orders were reported. Next slide, please. So, and with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Yes. On the slide number 3, where you show the new exhaust fan for the odor scrubbers being installed.
Yes.
The one before that. Do you have any policy that would have prevented the smell at this stage? Aren't there isolation tools that you could have used?
So, good question, Mayor. So what we did use is temporary fans in the meanwhile. But the thing is, the temporary fans don't seal with the existing pipe, and so are not. So it does not guarantee that 100% of the airflow goes through those or gets treated before getting vented out. So we took those measures, but definitely we could.
But that's not an isolation tool.
It's not an isolation.
So why didn't you use isolation tools?
I'm sorry?
Why did you not use isolation tools to keep the stench from spreading?
Because councilperson, this is the pipe coming in from the building, which is where the odors are generated. And then this is exactly where the new system has to go and tie in. So we kind of had to remove the existing one and then kind of crane in the new equipment and then make all those connections. This is all fiberglass air piping too. So there was, there was not a way to achieve foolproof seal with any of the temporary systems that we were using, because it's going in the same exact spot from where the air piping is coming in and where it's leaving.
Okay, I don't know what to say to that, but on the last page where it shows the health effects, according to the readings that you show here, the odor should have barely been smelled. How do you explain the intensity of the smell?
So there's two different effects here, right? The health effects, and you were absolutely correct earlier, Mayor Martinez, parts per million is typically what people do talk about. That is not, as Mary pointed out, what BAA-QMD has put on the monitors, which is parts per billion. What we wanted to, and we had this conversation the other day with Councilman Zepeda, we wanted to make sure, because we did bring up some of these values, and there was concern by some of the citizenry of whether these were going to have health impacts or even what some of these values were. So we wanted to share some of these things. You were correct to get from the parts per billion that we have seen, right? You need to divide that by 1,000. That will get you parts per million. What we have shown on the bottom trend here on this graph is all of the instances in the last 6 months of anything that exceeded that 60 parts per billion on the fence line for the north fence line. Outside of that, it shows you in relation to the actual health impacts designed by OSHA, right, and put in this graph, 2 to 5 on a prolonged exposure may cause the nausea, the tearing of the eyes, the headaches, disruption of sleep, right? These are the things that OSHA has defined in parts per million. We are not indicating that this has not been a disruption. Absolutely, people can smell the odors far below the level there where there would actually be health impacts, and we do understand that that is a disturbance of activities. Whether you want your children to be outdoors, whether you want your windows open, we absolutely agree that those odors are going to be present, whether there are long-term health impacts or not. So there's two different standards. One is actually impact on your long-term health and things that may become permanent. There's the other side where it does become a nuisance and a disturbance of your daily activities. So that's why we wanted to show this. We do not dispute that there was a disruption of people's lives and activities. That is absolutely a standard we are, shooting to achieve where we're not disrupting the neighbors.
All right, well, we got complaints that should only have come to us if it was 2 to 5, because we had reports of nausea, we had reports of tearing of the eyes, we had reports of headaches. So how do you account for the fact that people had these effects when the readings show we weren't even there?
I will tell you that there are a lot of people who have different sensitivities, and that is very real, especially for people who have long-term asthma, for people who are prone to migraines. This absolutely is going to exacerbate any of those underlying conditions. So it is not that we're saying that this did not occur. This is what OSHA defines as normal exposure, but absolutely there may be individuals who experience this at a much lower level.
So knowing this, being a responsible company, wouldn't you actually attempt to be even better than the standards set by OSHA?
And I will tell you that, again, the equipment that is at the facility that is at our disposal are online, other than the disruption. We were discussing it earlier. One of the challenges is it's like flying an airplane with 100 people on board and you have to do engine work at the same time you're flying, there was no way around disconnecting the exhaust fan. There was no redundancy to switch it to an alternate system. And unfortunately, there aren't real isolation valves on that piping, so that we couldn't just shut it off. This is incoming odorous air from the full collection system. So absolutely, and that is the goal. The goal is to be much better than the standards. More importantly, our communications was not up to par. And that is one of the things that we, are trying to achieve, being in front of this, making sure that the residents are aware. So if you are planning on some activity at your home, if you're planning on doing, having a child's birthday party outside, you can look on, and we've talked to Councilman Zepeda about how do we get this information, to the city. We've talked to Richard Diaz, being better about planning ahead, being in front of this. The goal is to have at least 1 week's notice for items we know are going to be potentials to create odors. There will always be emergencies that will come up, but being in front of this absolutely is our plan.
Okay, I want to go back to the isolation tool. I think knowing that this could happen again, you should have a valve, as you mentioned. Did you put a valve in?
I would say the ideal time to have done that was when it was open, but I do believe that
we'll definitely look into all of those options. Now, Mayor Martinez, one thing that does happen in such cases is the flow of the foul air being created is continuous. So even in this case, what we have done is as soon as we disconnected, we routed the piping to the temporary scrubber so we can still fly in. But at some point, we kind of have to disconnect it so we can put in the new system and tie into all the existing piping. But point definitely noted. And we look at every opportunity there is to have either a bypass channel or isolation valves with a bypass channel. So temporarily, the air could be routed through a different path while the new equipment is being installed in its place.
And I don't mean to tell you how to do your job, but you could have used isolation balloons, and those isolation balloons could have been extracted with one of the isolation valves that you should have installed. So just food for thought.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions for you. Just to confirm, you were saying that the obsolete air exhaust fan was removed on 12/4 at 5 p.m.? That's when the first incident was registered?
It was removed earlier that day. I don't know the exact time it was removed, but I can find out
Yeah.
the exact time.
Be
it
nice
was.
to have a time frame so we can understand how impact happens over time when these things happen.
I can find out
Yeah, thank
exactly
you.
when it was disconnected and removed from
And-
operation.
And the other thing is kind of my chief concern when it comes to the operations of the plant and our history with your company. So there was another incident in January. Kind of a similar, different reasons, similar outcome. And there was promises made at that time around advance notice. And it was kind of made clear that, you were going to take steps to do everything you can to give advance notice and to communicate better. And here we are again, and we're hearing similar things. And I'm a new council member, and the more I look into the history that we have with your company, unfortunately, it seems like there's a very long history where these types of things continue to happen and we get great promises. But when an incident actually happens, there seems to be a lack of follow-through. I just wonder if you can speak to how this time it's going to be different.
I would say that's a fair point. I mean, obviously, our intent is there. One of the things we are working on, like I said, is establishing better relationships within the city and the Public Works group to make sure that we have the avenue to do so. In the past, I think sometimes, we've sent an email, or we may have, again, given some details. One of the things we found in this instance was we had talked about the activities that were going to occur, but no one really said in exact terms, there is a much higher potential for odors to be created. Now, again, in hindsight, coordinating some of these projects separately, one at a time, obviously no one was anticipating a brownout, but having a better awareness, really looking at these construction activities, really, and I can tell you we have since, with CPM Group, gone through all of the planned upgrades coming forward already. We have put notices on each one of these, what the requirements are. We've discussed amending our subcontracts with some of our construction groups to put in liquidated damages to keep them in line and make sure that they're on board, right? That there's skin in the game for how this actually occurs. Because we need to be the responsible party. We need to come and say, we have done everything we can. I beg that we turn around and look forward to how do we improve all of this together. We're working with Robert, we're working with the city to make sure that we have a better education system and that we have a better avenue to communicate these to the citizens, not just to Public Works, not just to BAAQMD, that we're actually making it all the way back to the citizenry of Richmond.
Just wondering, I'm kind of curious, you were saying that you're the regional vice president, and you oversee the Richmond plant. How long have you been in that role?
This role, 9 years.
9 years. And then,
Not specifically over Richmond, but as a regional vice president, yes. I have been with the city, overseeing the city of Richmond since 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
And then, kind of finally, you've made a point around health impacts, and I completely understand the difference between parts per billion, parts per million, and I understand that, my understanding is that BACMed has put it so low so that we can catch things way before they're a problem, and, before we're sending people to hospitals. But looking at the contract that we have with you, with your company, it clearly states that there's a responsibility for action, not just when there's a health impact, but also when there's a nuisance. And I just wonder, are you clear on that? Do you understand that that is also, it's not just, when there's a threat of sending people to hospitals, but it's also when it's in the parts per billions and people are, and it's a nuisance for people. Is that clear to you as a company, that that is a part of your responsibility in terms of your contract with the city of Richmond?
Absolutely. And personally, to me, I do at my home live near a wastewater plant. More importantly, I oftentimes will smell Georgia Pacific. I do understand that those nuisances they can be very disruptive. So I absolutely agree. And the goal is always to achieve no odors outside of the fence line. I'm well aware that there are other odors that do tend to happen in the area, but no, our goal is to use every avenue that we have available at the facility and make sure that we are doing to the best of our ability that mitigation.
Just want to make sure that's clear. I mean, I was driving by Washington. I live in the area. I'm in District 3. And I live in the area, and I was driving by Washington Elementary the night of the 4th, and it was so strong. And it was so intense, and I was like, this is awful for the kids that have to go to school right next to this plant. Truly, and I live many blocks away, and it was very strong at my house as well. So I just want to make sure we're clear that it's not just sending people to hospitals. That is a part of the responsibility. Thank you.
I want to give you credit where credit's due. So if we can go back to slide number 4, where it shows the new exhaust fan and suction piping. Yeah, there. I noticed, are those butterfly valves above and below the vertical pipe coming in?
Oh, those two?
Yes.
Valves, yes. This is also to reroute, so the piece of pipe that you see coming between those two valves, that's coming from another facility too.
Right.
So now we've expanded the odor control to include more facilities, if I may. And those are in case we have to isolate that portion for whatever reason. So yes,
So
those are isolation valves
Okay, all right then.
in that line.
So I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave the wrong impression. So I appreciate the fact that you did put those isolation valves in. So
Yes, to isolate that line and yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cepeda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that we spoke last week, and I had mentioned towards the end of our call that our community is very, very upset, that they have been upset for many, many years. I think the sentiment, especially in the Point Richmond area, because those are the individuals that are mostly affected. No matter which way the wind blows, they're the first ones to be affected. And then you also have Santa Fe Neighborhood Council, and it goes from there. The word that comes to mind is just disrespect. Right? And I did level set with you last Thursday when we met, or maybe it was Wednesday. All my days are meshing. But I did let you know that this meeting was all about you. The spotlight was on you. We have one agenda item, and it's you.
Yes.
But it's more than just you. It's about our community.
Yes.
It's about
Absolutely.
holding people responsible and holding people accountable. I did several interviews earlier today, and they said, why Veolia and why now? You just got lucky. You're first. You're not the last. We have new leadership. Things have changed. The contract, when it was first issued, a whole different council, a whole different mentality, whole different rules. Things have changed. That disrespect for our community, we're going to change it one way or the other, because we're no longer going to be asking, please. Please communicate. Please don't stick up our city. Please, no more. Going forward, you're either with us or you're not with us. That disrespect has to go. Accountability, you mentioned earlier, liquidated damages that you're asking your partners, your carrier partners to work with you. That is going to be money on Veolia's side if one of your vendors does not pull their weight. What is the city of Richmond, and more importantly, our residents, going to get out of that? How do we hold you accountable so that when we leave this meeting tonight, and even as this meeting is going on, that we have alarms going off and people getting sick? How do we make sure, because our taxpayers are paying a lot of money, how do we get some of that back to their pocket? Because they are paying to be able to breathe in this dirty air. And I am going to want some of those answers. If you don't have them today, I know that in our meeting, you mentioned you will be back, and you promised you will be back at the end of January, early February. So with the shaking of your head, you're saying yes again, right? It's all about accountability. You will be back, and we will have you back, and we're going to have the opportunity again for our community to listen and participate as part of the process and give you their input and give you their stories for the many, many years that they have had to deal with this issue. And we're going to want some answers. You mentioned skin in the game. It's also our skin. What skin in the game will you have? We want to know, what are you going to do for every one of those alarms? In our contract, it does mention that we are to have 0 odors or minimal odors. I'm not the legal one here. The legal one is here next to me. Shannon might know the specific word, but it pretty much says there should be no odors coming out of Veolia. What is the skin in the game that you will be playing going forward? Okay, not for the city, but for our residents, because they have had enough. And when is enough going to be enough? Enough is today. Tomorrow is going to be a whole new day. So I hope that from today, what you hear from all the comments coming in, you learn from it, and you put together a playbook for tomorrow and say, here's what we're going to do out of everything that came out of this meeting. And I want to see skin in the game. And I thank you already for the actions you've taken since last week. That's internal. I want to see external. What is the community, what is the city going to get? This is a multi-million-dollar contract that we have with you. We need to see actions, and we need to see them now, and we need to see them on paper. A couple other questions here. How can we fully mitigate those odors? You're not the first the first agency, a wastewater agency we're not the first that you deal with. You deal with many others, so I'm sure there's some solutions out there. Prior to me sitting here in City Council, I was in the West County Wastewater District dealing with sewage day in, day out. So I know just a little bit about it. But I know there's got to be other solutions in there. Can we cover the plant? That can be a solution. I know it's not cheap, but we can bring that to the table. And that will then mitigate any odors from coming out. So I expect solutions, answers, skin in the game, results. We need a timeline and a time frame of when all this is going to be put in place. The solution of covering up that plant so the odors stop going out, let's figure out cost, maybe about $2 million. When can we start that project? The community has invested $40 million already into what we're doing in that plant. I'm sure $2 million more to fix this issue. I'm pretty sure they will all say yes to it, because it's going to resolve an issue that's been going on for years and years and years. You have mentioned that it was a perfect storm, and I know you're still pulling together all the data points and everything that happened. But in that perfect storm, as we're looking at what could have happened, I know you have mentioned PG&E. You mentioned that earlier today as well. I got the report from PG&E. There was no brownouts that day. So what else happened? And I'm not pointing fingers. I want solutions. I want answers. And if you say, oh, PG&E gave you the wrong report, prove them wrong. I told them to listen to this meeting. I say, you're under the bus right now. So they pulled their report really quickly. And they showed me all the brownouts they've had. And none of them occurred that day. So what else happened? The other one that you mentioned was in regards to the monitors, that maybe they're too sensitive. Right? Were they not working correctly? We know that last week, or maybe the week prior, the company that we've hired to do the monitors had just checked the system. And they've confirmed that everything was working fine. So let's confirm it again if you believe they were wrong. But if we're going to be coming up with solutions and we're going to be pointing somewhere that we are confirmed, that they know it, and if the monitors were wrong, I also want to know, what did we do the second we found out they were wrong? And why didn't we find out earlier that they were not working? This is a health hazard. The email that really got to me, and everything just started building because we had not received proper communication, was from one of our constituents who said, "Do I need to evacuate?" He has a pregnant wife. And the answer is, I don't know. I'm looking at my city manager. I'm looking at staff going, has Veolia responded? What is going on? Do we tell people evacuate? Do we not? Because we're at fault. If they have asked us a question and we can't properly answer it, what do we tell someone who is pregnant? Just stay there, close your windows, even though you can smell it? Or evacuate and have a cost that maybe you didn't have to have? These are the questions that we get. And again, in partnership, I want to make sure that we get those answers, because it is not fair to our community. Richmond has been known for the city of crime and corruption. And everywhere I look as a new city council member, everyone likes running over the city of Richmond, because we're just Richmond. It is a new Richmond. We're no longer just Richmond that we can run over. We're no longer the Richmond that people can just look past us. It is a new Richmond, a new leadership, and going forward, it's all about accountability. So please, don't ever again, and I'm not saying that you did, but in case that you did, don't ever look at us again and say, yes, just Richmond. Because since the contract began, from all communications from people that have gone in the past, either other elected officials, community leaders, they're all saying the same thing. Nobody ever cared enough. There was never any accountability. And it appears that Veolia just whatever. You've never taken the city seriously. And it's not just the city government, but it's the people that matter. So if you're not taking the city staff's calls and emails and our calls and emails, you are telling all of our residents you don't care for them. That's the message that has come across. And that's what we must stop. It is not fair to our community. Yes, we are predominantly black and brown community. And we are predominantly black and brown city council, and we're telling you enough is enough. You must stop that, because we're going to be standing up for our community. About how many other, because I know you're a worldwide company, how many clarifiers have you put down in other areas? And has there been any learning opportunities from there that you could have brought forward to Richmond? So I would like that answer. If you don't have it now, I know it might be a big number, but that needs to come forward as well in your report to us. Because again, if everywhere else, if the rich communities of the world had clarifiers going down and it still smelled like roses, and Richmond got the shady part of it, there's something wrong there. I want to be able to hear more from our community before I head on more here. But I really wanted to drive that home, that everywhere that I have gone in our community, they have all let me know how disrespectful they felt. And we need to change that perception, if it's a perception on your side. But we need to change and make sure that we start respecting our community. So I'll pause for now.
Councilmember Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Cepeda, I almost don't even want to ask any questions after that. But I do have a couple that I don't feel like got touched on for me, and I can appreciate the report and just some of the explanation of what was happening that day that at least illuminates a little bit more and puts things into context. So I guess one of my first questions I wanted to ask is, at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that right now you are taking many steps to address issues, looking at this as kind of like a hindsight issue and trying to do better moving forward. but I don't have like a picture necessarily what does that look like outside of we're working on it. So like what kind of steps are you taking, for example, to one of them mainly being able to increase communication and odor mitigation? What type of steps are you taking?
So one of the things that we're doing currently is making sure that there is much more communication internally, not just
Internal?
with the
Sorry,
operations.
could barely hear. What was that?
Sorry, more communications internally between operations and the construction group. We talk about the activities. We talk in general, big terms. These are some of the things that are going to happen. But making sure that we have looked at every single aspect of that. Again, the compounding factors that are going to go with these things. Which ones are going to be odor creating? Have we given notice? I don't think that as much as we've talked about this in the past, as much as the operations group is very cognizant of those things, I don't know that they've relayed that truly to the construction contractor and said, this will happen or else, right? So when you're planning these activities, you have to look at what is the wind direction. You need to look at what is, is it going to rain that day? What is the high temperature that day? What time of day is this going to occur? Because all of those factors are going to come together to exacerbate some of the things that are happening. Just like out in the collection system, if you were to do some of this work at 3 a.m., you would have a much lower flow coming in. You might have less odorous air coming in. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people are coming home, they're taking showers, they're adding more to the wastewater collection system itself. It's pushing more of that odorous air into the facility. So timing is very important. Wind direction is very important. Seasonality as far as which way the wind is going is also important. So all of those factors have to start coming into when we plan this, when we do the majority of this work. And again, if there is no way around that, the communications of these things are happening, we'll give you as much notice as we can because again, these are planned activities. Again, there's always going to be something, an emergency basis that could come up. We still need to be in front of that as the emergencies are happening. I know we have 24-hour access to, some of the public works staff to make sure that we're communicating those. How far does that go back to the community? We don't know. We need to have a better plan on how that all lines up and how it's getting back to all of the community, right?
So there was something that you said in there that I needed to get a little bit more clear on, about operations not communicating basically with the contractors who are doing the constructions. What do you mean by operations or operations staff? Like who are you referring to?
So we have operators that show up at the facility every single day that are making sure that we remain compliant with all of the regulatory requirements.
Are they a part of Veolia or what
Yes,
agents? Okay.
they are Veolia staff. They tend to be not involved in the construction area, both for safety reasons as well as because those are new assets that in many cases are not tied in to the current assets that they are running. So yes, we have conversations, but there's not a clear coordination or not clear enough coordination of what those activities can do to impact the day-to-day operations. We've already started turning around and saying, this cannot be. We have to have better absolute day-to-day communication. What's happening today? What are the impacts? And what do we need to turn around and stop if we have not provided notice, if we have not coordinated some of those well enough?
Okay. Yeah, no, if there could be communications between those who are doing the construction and those who are checking up on the plant, that would definitely be good. It's concerning that that wasn't already happening, but, that's a redundancy at this point. It's about how we could do better moving forward. But as part of that communication, we have communication with our staff, we have communications between the operators and those who are helping upgrade the plant. What is the general communication to the community as these things are happening? And I ask that because this isn't a brand new thing. It's kind of been it's been a consistent thing ongoing that we've been receiving complaints and impacts by. So what's that communication to community like when there is a planned construction and upgrade that could potentially release an output that could disrupt their lives, how does that communication get to them?
And that is one of the challenges that we're dealing with now. We haven't had a good outlet. I've talked to Robert about being able to have access to a portion of the city's website for education reasons, for public notices, for things that can have an impact that haven't been done in the past. We've looked at how that could be coordinated. Again, Richard Diaz being hired as emergency services manager goes a long way towards, coordinating that with the city. How do we turn around and make sure that these things are getting back to the city themselves, not just a conversation or a report between ourselves and, Public Works?
Okay, I'll try to wrap up a couple of questions because I also want community to have a chance to speak to. Have you considered moving forward outside of just communicating with Public Works, but starting to do meet and greets with like the Point Richmond Neighborhood Council, Brickyard Cove Council, and also the local PTA group and schools in that impacted area? Because those are community folks who are very engaged and are the ones that are engaging with us saying, hey, this is how we're being impacted today, what's going on. Is there a strategy to at least reach out to those already existing stakeholders who are active in the community moving forward?
We have not started that, but it's a great suggestion. We have started already devising activities and tours for the schools to invite them to come in, to learn more about the system, to get them involved and understand what's happening. We also wanted to have an open house. Once the construction is done, when it's safe to do so, to have more people into the facility. But providing feedback is a great opportunity for us to learn from the community on where we can improve.
Okay, and final two questions. I felt like I already said that already, but one other thing came to mind. The county does have a warning system anytime we have flaring that's coming from the refinery. Has there been any type of coordination with Contra Costa County about using their notification system if there is a huge odor release or a potential emergency that's happening, that they can send out a notification in coordination with Veolia?
I can honestly say that, no, that hasn't happened.
Okay. All right, well, maybe that could be something to explore. That way everybody has some sort of outlet to know what's going on. And you mentioned that these projects, and this, swear this is the last question for now. You mentioned that these projects are already planned and scheduled outside of foreseeable emergencies. Is there at least a way we, especially whenever you're planning on coming back in January with like a full report, right? On the incidences from the past 2 days? Is there a possibility to get a calendar on when some of these upgrades are going to happen that can be shared publicly so the community can at least be aware and have a forecast on when they might be experiencing impacts?
Councilperson, we actually do share updates on the bi-weekly report, including pictures, including anytime we have a kickoff meeting for a project that's, even if it's going to start 2 months hence, 3 months hence, we share pictures of the players, identify the players, the architect, the designer, the engineer, the project manager, all of those details for projects which are in the pipeline as well as coming on. Having said that, we'll be happy to share about those projects in any other forums. Maybe once we have wrapped up construction, as Melissa said, once we start the plant outreach efforts or tours, we'll be happy to show those locations where upgrades are forthcoming, the nature of those, the magnitude of those, how would it help the citizens, things of that nature. We'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, whatever could be publicly shared, and I would just, as a final comment, then I'll close out, is not just sharing it on a website. We do have folks that don't go online or really even know how to use a computer. If you're lucky, they might have a Facebook. But outside of that, having something that can be posted up very publicly, especially in the closest impacted areas, that's a physical thing. Even you have so many churches the schools in the area, few community centers, they can help post some of that information. That way they're in the know and not just wondering, why do I want to puke right now?
Sure. So for every project that is out in the city as well as in the plant, we also have project-specific boards which identifies the scope, the key people to contact in case of any dust complaints or what have you. What we can definitely do is see how we can add some more information, maybe flyers to a box below as a handout so someone can get more information on those projects.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have for now.
Councilmember Bonner, did you want to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you for the presentation and coming over today. I would like to follow on what my colleague, Councilmember Zepeda said about accountability. I did not receive the alert. I don't live in the area. I live in the farthest point in Richmond from that point in El Sobrante Hills. But I'm very familiar with Veolia's lack of action when needed. So I live in El Sobrante Hills. There are hills, and there are storm drains, and they're supposed to be cleared so mudslides won't happen. They had not been cleared for years. When the neighbors complained to me when I came to City Council, I brought it to the attention of Public Works and contacted Ms. Mary Phelps, who in turn contacted Veolia, and Veolia kept promising they'll do it. It's been a year that I'm at the City Council. No results yet. So seems like Councilmember Zepeda is in direct contact with you. I would like to be in direct contact with you and personally, if possible, hold you responsible to that, because it's the rain season. We really need the storm drains cleared. That's just, about the performance, how much I know about Veolia. As I said, not much experience with wastewater, but unfortunately, a very bad experience with drainage. I have some questions for you. First of all, as I said, I did not receive the message. I just asked my colleague to show it to me, and it doesn't mention if it's level 1 or 2, why there is no level about it. Are you familiar with levels? Level 1, 2, 3 that refineries use? Level 1 is inside the campus. Level 2 bothers sensitive people, and level 3 affects the public. There was no information about the level of impact to the public. You just provide some numbers by email. How are the public supposed to decipher those numbers?
We actually did have a conversation, Councilman Zepeda, I think you were there. We talked about this last week. These are not our monitors. We don't control these monitors. We don't update these monitors. We did ask to be able to, and we talked to Mary Phelps with Public Works at the time, to be able to add more information. It was brought to our attention last week that there were people who didn't know, should I evacuate? Should I stay? Should I go? More importantly, there are 2 alerts each time. Again, it alerts when it exceeds the 60 parts per billion, and then it also gives you a following alert when it is below the 60. The problem with that is if you don't know that 60 is the magic number, it doubles everything. So, and it doesn't tell you what that 60 represents. So we've already asked for there to be additional programming and additional information added to the system. The idea of a level 1, a level 2, we can certainly look into that, and we can certainly discuss it with the Public Works group to see if that is, a good standard to do. But more importantly, it's about making sure that there is some level of information associated rather than just a value, right? We absolutely agree.
You agree that
It needs to be more descriptive, that it needs to give some indication of what that level is. I believe, in the graph, we talked about it being, again, below the actual health impacts for the majority of people, but it doesn't mean, again, that they're not smelling it and there's not concern. So being able to have something that goes with that and say, what does this mean in terms of parts per million in, and maybe that's a request to say, can it do a conversion at the same time? That's a discussion that can be had with a company that comes out and does the actual calibration.
Thank you, and I will have some questions actually for Bay Area Air Quality Management District in that regards, but continuing with this subject with you, you said PG&E had issues, and I'm not sure if there were issues, but let's suppose there were issues. Is there any backup power at the plant?
There are emergency diesel generators which power the critical equipment in the plant.
I'm sorry, I hardly can hear you. Speak louder, please.
I'm sorry, there are emergency diesel generators which power the critical pieces of equipment in a plant. The one thing that happens is in case of a power outage, those generators kick in and then they take over and start powering the pieces of equipment. However, when these blowers went down, it was a momentary glitch. So the generators take a certain amount of time to sense the lack of power before they kick on and start powering the plant. And in this case, it was not a blackout, which is kind of an outage, but it was a brownout, which is a rapid change in the voltage.
Okay.
Which
I wonder if you're aware of what you're doing, the way you answer my question and the way the presentation has been. You take us through a set of technical information, what happens, what these are. I really don't care. You're in charge of the operation. You're going to do something. If the power goes down, something's going to happen. Is there redundancy in place? Who were the engineers? Who made the decisions? What is the internal review process? What are the results? What went wrong? You just keep explaining things. Technically, this happened. Yes, maybe. But the outcome, the lessons taken, why it happened, not pinpointing those is not a good sign. It means no lessons were learned from what happened, right? Also, transparency, building trust with the community is very important. So I'm really curious, from engineering point of view, what went wrong? No technical details, please.
There was a dip in the power. Equipment failed. The equipment could not be restarted.
And you didn't foresee that? I mean, with all the experience that Veolia has, precautions were not taken. Proper decisions were not made.
In this case, it's not about decisions. Again, there are generators. If the power were to completely fail, they will start. There is a switchgear. I realize sounds technical, but it's factual. When there is a dip in power, because many of the components are now digital, they're impacted, whether it's
I
a
know,
spike
but
up or a spike down.
I would expect somebody running the operation would expect what could go wrong and have some redundancy in place. Apparently, there was nothing in place. Something went wrong, and the whole community was affected. And
Yeah.
you explain it as if it's being justified. It's not. I'm an engineer, too. I really don't know the details of that. I'm a different type of engineer. But I know when you review things, what went wrong, you can pinpoint the process, and I don't hear any of that. So let me continue with my questions. You said there is a $42 million upgrade. Can you just say in general what the upgrade is about?
Sure. So what it does is, this is what we call the grit removal system, which is when there are sands coming in through the sewer pipe. We now are putting in a system which will remove all of those, because otherwise those act like sandpaper, they erode the pipes. They also collect in the tanks, and then we'll have to take those out frequently to clean it and remove. So that's a grit upgrade. So we are installing a new grit removal system. The other thing we are doing is in the aeration, in the wastewater treatment, in the second stage, we add oxygen or air so that the bugs can break down the solids in the water. What we had before was an old, outdated way of aerating this water, or rather providing air to the water. What we are installing now are what we call diffusers, which are, they sit in the bottom, they look like mushrooms, and they bubble air throughout the whole tank. What it does is it evenly spreads the oxygen throughout the tank. So the bugs, in the presence of oxygen, can break down the organic matter in a much more efficient way. So in a nutshell, those are the upgrades which is happening in the plant as we speak. That's part of the $42 million upgrade that is
So
happening.
in terms of the overall function of the plant, if you look at the big picture, a black box, what's going to be improved?
The efficiency, the amount of which biological matter we can remove is definitely improving with all of these. The amount of debris, or specifically the amount of some rags and stuff that's coming in so we have what is called fine screens that's going to help remove all of those. So it does not go and settle in the pipes and the tanks and other places and clog up the pumps. We are also removing the sand, which is going to help improve the life of the pumps, life of the pipes, and not settle out in the various tanks and compromise the working of the process. So what we are doing in a nutshell is improving the process efficiency throughout the plant.
Thank you. So I assume you were not at the plant when this happened.
I was not at the plant when this happened.
Okay, can you explain who were, I mean, who were the engineers? How many engineers? Was it an issue of, lack of experience of the engineers, not enough at the site? What went on? Who made the decisions? Or who oversaw? And was there an internal review process? Or what were the outcomes?
So our project has a full-time dedicated on-site project manager. We have a full-time inspector who's on-site overseeing the various construction activities. We also have a project engineer on-site who's supporting the project, overseeing construction, taking pictures, documenting, answering questions, things of that nature. We also have the third-party engineering firm who's a design engineer of the project, who are very heavily involved. So at any given point in time, in terms of project management, there are at least 3 people on site overseeing the construction activity on this project. So there are also several, I say several because I don't know the exact number of contractor personnel who were working, but they work in very different places across the plant on different construction activities, all going simultaneously. So we also have that's a general contractor, and their electricians, their pipe fitters, their tradespeople, all of them working in the plant to complete and construct this project. So that's generally speaking the team which is working in the plant at all times. We also have third-party engineers who do visit for certain specific activities. Now in this case, what we do know is, so we have periodic planning meetings to pencil in that these are the activities, we call it the schedule. So typically we share a 3-week schedule, which is we look forward 3 weeks, and we, on a weekly basis, we discuss what activities are going to happen. And we also have a weekly planning, this progress meeting, we call it, with the city. Now, in that, we did share the upgrades that's coming in. What I did not do is connect the dots and say, we spoke about taking down the basin. We spoke about replacing the fan. I did not connect the dot and tell them that during these specific items, there is an elevated risk of odor. So
So there was, I assume, no protocol about the things to watch out for.
So that was not, so I did not communicate that clearly, saying, I mean, we had said that these are the activities happening, but it was, did not basically make or connect the dots.
Did you actually review it? Did you see it? Did you spend time on it? Or there was not enough even time to review what they were doing?
No, these were, so in the very early stages of the project, almost 2 years back when the construction started, these are all critical activities which kind of have to happen. So we construct one infrastructure, but now we have to tie in to the process. So all of those are penciled in. But as and when we get closer to the activity, we break it down into more and more and more details. And then that is shared on a monthly basis with the city, with the consultant, with everybody has access to that information. And then we again parse it out and look at the 3-week look ahead every single week and see how it's moving. Because that gives us a very narrow window of when these activities are actually going to happen. So that's how we manage the communication to see what is coming ahead. And yes, we do look at weather factors, like especially for rain. We do look out for those days, and we plan around any inclement weather that is in forecast, because we avoid doing any kind of outside high electrical work during rainstorms and things of that nature. So individual tasks that is laid out is then dialed in with the weather conditions and other things that we do. But in this case, I had not completed the loop and said, these are the days when there is an elevated risk.
I appreciate your explanation, but it's my conclusion from what you said that there is no protocol of the set of steps that needs to be taken or washed out for in place, and you improvise as the supervisor, or as the process goes on with other engineers, you decide what needs to be done next?
We do have what is called, so for any shutdown procedure, we actually called, it's like a MOP or method of performance. So that lays out the individual steps. And this is done with a lot of planning with the engineering team as well as the contractors, on all the logistics of it. This is when we want to start, this is when we want to stop. These are the intermediate steps that have to happen. This is step 1, step 2, step 3. It also helps us, manage the project. So we do have.
Is there a protocol in place for the procedure that was supposed to happen?
For this one, I don't have. I don't have that information with me right now, but I will look into it and I will report back to you when we come back.
Thank you. That's the most important part I'm trying to get into. If there is caring for the community and what may go wrong for any operation like this, there should be a protocol well thought in advance by different engineers, different groups, contractors, whatever, to make sure things will be going smoothly, all the needed redundancies are in place, people have the right experience and everything. Apparently, it was, sort of, things were moving forward under your supervision, and if you didn't pay attention to one little thing, then things get messed up the way they did. This is not right.
Actually, I would like to announce that Dr. Meredith Bauer from BACMed is on Zoom now. So I would like to have her be part of this conversation.
Who is that?
Dr. Meredith Bauer from BACMed.
Oh, okay, excellent.
I also want to mention and correct me if I'm wrong, but what Sahela is referring to is a process hazard analysis and also a pre-job safety review. Were those done?
I will get records of those and report back to you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Robinson, and after her, I would like to hear from Dr. Meredith Bauer to see if she has any comments that she wants to share with us at this point.
Can I just add something quickly?
No, it's,
Okay.
go ahead.
So I'm still trying to understand the incident a little bit, because when Mary Phelps was going over the incident, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, she said that there were multiple spikes over different days. Is that correct? Yes, she's right, she's putting her head. So were there multiple brownouts?
I will tell you there weren't multiple brownouts, but the effects of the brownouts lasted about 12 hours because it did take out some equipment that could not be restarted. We did have to wait until the morning to reach out to a vendor to get some of that resolved. Having said that, yes, there were spikes over from Monday evening until early Wednesday morning on the actual sensors. And again, some of those were a combination of the activities going on. So the brownout was the unexpected factor, but the others were continuing over that time frame. Unfortunately, you can see by the size of some of this equipment, this odor exhaust fan isn't like just moving a fan in your home. It has to be put in with a crane. It had to be rewired. Then we had to have a control specialist come out and actually program the controls. So it was actually off for a period of days. So some of these things do take time. And again, this is why we need to be so cognizant of giving notice in advance so that people can plan accordingly.
How long did you know about this construction project happening on that day?
Construction as in the individual activities.
That you were
happening.
going to replace this particular piece of equipment on that day? How long was that known?
So we have known it for at least 2 to 3 weeks because it has been in the 3-week look-ahead schedule as an upcoming activity. But knowing the day gets narrower and narrower as we come closer to the activity.
In no time in those 2 or 3 weeks did you put 2 and 2 together to say, hey, this has a high possibility of having an incident?
We just did not communicate that clearly enough to the city.
So another thing, I just keep wondering, I'm sitting here kind of wondering, so, you know, in my district, wastewater is new to me, but storm drains are not. In District 3 along Cutting Boulevard, the flooding that happened last year was extreme. And to come to find out that a lot of that was caused by storm drains that were not cleaned, it makes me think about, you know, what happens when Veolia fails to uphold the agreements in our contract? What is the consequence to you, to Veolia? Do you just say, I'm sorry? Or is there more consequences?
I will have to take a look at the details of what occurred last year as far as the flooding. But the contract is multiple amendments long. There are different criteria that have to be met. There are different allocations that have to come and agreements that have to be met to move things forward. Currently, I'm not aware of any liquidated damages per se in the contract, but I can certainly review and again, get back to you with the details in the follow-up.
I would also like you to bring forward some recommendations for possible impacts or consequences so that we don't end up back here again. Like what happens? How can you be held accountable? I think we'll have our own recommendations as well.
Excuse me, if I might, I would like to interrupt to say that the contract says that in the odor control facilities, the company's commitment shall be to achieve zero odor incidents, and the company, in conjunction with the city, shall develop a program that identifies procedures for certifying and documenting odor complaints, and shall establish procedures to address current failures of the odor control program. So in 2023 alone, Veolia has exceeded the threshold of 60 parts per billion. And you have done that, January, 30 alerts, February, 42 alerts, May, 10 alerts, June, 6 alerts, July, 8 alerts, August, peak at 320 parts per billion, and on 8/14/23, September, 3 alerts, October, 21 alerts, November, 2 alerts, and December to date, 30 alerts. That doesn't sound like zero order incidents. Can you explain what sort of response you've had to all those less than zero order incidents? What have you done other than say, I'm sorry?
I can tell you we've reviewed our procedures in operating the equipment that's at the site. At the end of the day, we're an operating company, and we're working to operate the equipment available to the best of our abilities.
Then the best of your abilities doesn't seem to be enough, because the 30 alerts in January should have had you down to zero thereafter. Continue.
It's just my point. I'm feeling like, we keep coming back to this place where multiple incidents, and then there's a lot of talk, and there's no consequence for not upholding your side of the agreement. So I just like that's kind of where I'm at.
Yes, at this point, maybe we should ask BACMed to make some statements in terms of holding Veolia accountable.
Yeah, so are you all ready for me?
Yes.
It sounds like it. Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Meredith Bauer. Good evening, and I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry we couldn't be here in person. We were a late addition to the agenda. So anyway, we're happy to be here virtually. We have a team of folks who can answer questions that may arise, including the one that came up about accountability. But let me just say a little bit about myself. I am the Deputy Executive Officer for Engineering and Compliance at the Air District. And so we've got our compliance and enforcement folks who have done a lot of work in the last week. Also on the line, we have some folks who know about the monitoring side of things as well. So hopefully we can cover the questions that may arise. So as most of you are aware, the Air District is responsible for establishing and enforcing air quality regulations throughout the Bay Area. And before I give some of the comments that I wanted to give, I really want to let you all know that, the odor issues and the challenges that have arisen over the last week, we take them very seriously. We responded very quickly, and I want to run through that with you, but we know it's not been easy, and we want to definitely be partners in trying to make the situation better. So let me just give you a little bit of, walk you through our side of things so that will help kind of you understand the role we play and how we can maybe strengthen what we do if it's helpful. So last week when the odor incident started, so December 5th, as you all know, our inspection staff responded to several odor complaints. And they were, as you all know, sewage-like odors in the Point Richmond neighborhood. One of the things we do when we learn about this type of event and we get complaints is we post information as quickly as we can to our social media platforms. I know some of you folks are saying not everyone uses social media. I don't really either, so I rely on other ways of getting it. But and that's an area that I think a lot about. So to the extent we can get better about how we get information to folks. I'm really all ears about that. Now, in terms of then that same night, we connected with the staff at the Richmond Veolia wastewater treatment plant, and our inspection team was told about the construction, and you've all heard plenty about that, so we don't need to go into that, but we were connected with the Veolia folks. And then we did initiate an on-site investigation. And we go there on site so that we can observe and confirm the odors and the source and the monitors and the readings, all that on our own. And then we start creating a report. In addition, in this particular case, we did have available on December 6th an air monitoring van. We don't always have that available, but it's outfitted to measure hydrogen sulfide. So we did deploy that in the Point Richmond neighborhood. And, you know, all of this confirms the same thing you've been hearing all evening, which is there were a number of short duration peaks of hydrogen sulfide. I mean, your noses told you all that anyway, but it was confirmed with all the monitors. And that went on through December 4th to 6th. Again, you've already heard about that. Our inspectors have confirmed that the hydrogen sulfide levels have returned back to typical levels. So hopefully you all are breathing better these days. Now, in terms of enforcement, because that seems to be something that, you know, we've been just talking about accountability. I'll walk through a little bit of what's happened so far, but I can certainly invite Jeff Gove, who's on. He's our director for the Compliance and Enforcement Division, and he can kind of give you a more general view of what our compliance process looks like. But in terms of the incident last week, violation, and that was for public nuisance violation. Throughout the week, our Air District inspectors, they have continued to patrol the Point Richmond area, and you know that's to ensure that you know things have they haven't continued. So that was last week. This is the beginning. The way it works is we kind of go on site, we collect information, we do what we can, try to manage, mitigate, try to work with the facility to figure out the problem and fix it as quickly as possible. After that, we have a whole investigation phase. So we'll take the information, we may get more readings, we may get more information like you all. We have questions about what did happen with the brownout, what did, you know, so we will also be taking all of that and doing a report of our own. And again, I can invite Jeff to tell you more about that. So that's what's coming next for us. It's going to be ongoing. There'll be a period of time where we'll need to sort of, you know, keep it kind of close hold while we figure it out. Because with NOVs, there can be penalties, there can be outcomes, and that's something that is not really, you know, a public process until we sort of know where it's going to go. They end up being legal types of things. So that's the enforcement side of things. And maybe I'll pause there and see, this seems like the right time to see if Jeff wants to come on and to give us a little bit more background on that. And if you all there don't want more background, please stop me. I just want to be helpful. So if that sounds good, I'll have Jeff come on.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Gove, and I'm the Compliance and Enforcement Director. And when this event started, we got first noticed on December 5th at 9 a.m. of odor complaints that were coming in, and we started responding to those complaints. During that day, on the 5th, we received a total of 4 complaints, and we confirmed 3 of them. One of them was a complaint from the Washington Elementary School, and the administration was complaining on behalf of the entire school body. So it's just not a total of 4 complaints. We consider the entire school body complainants because they represent all the students, all the staff and teachers there. And it was impacting the school. And as part of our process, there's a health and safety code law that requires any district who receives odor complaints from a community center, a school, daycare centers, that we are required to notify the Contra Costa County Health Department and also the local fire departments. And that time frame is within 24 hours, but we did it that afternoon once we confirmed the complaint. So the county was notified and the local fire department of the odors impacting the school. On December 7th, we did issue a notice of violation to the city wastewater treatment plant for causing a public nuisance. Our investigation is still ongoing, and once we conclude that, we'll also be looking at the permit to operate. In that permit to operate, there are requirements for the H2S analyzers, and there's also requirements in there for them to take immediate corrective actions and record all that information and what they did when they were doing their due diligence once they've got those high H2S readings. And I'll pause there, Meredith, and turn it back.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and so the result of investigations and and these notices of violations, we work with our legal folks on potential penalties. So there is an accountability level that is here. We're just not there yet.
Sister, I'm sorry.
Before we get to, can I say one thing before we get to questions?
Yes.
Because I have a feeling we're gonna talk about the public health side of things, and I just want to set expectations as we get into, if we go into that conversation. So at the district, we rely on county health officials to help us understand local impacts like this one. So I wish, I haven't heard that Contra Costa County was here, but it would be really great. They would be the ones that would help us answer those particular questions about, you know, at 80 parts per billion, what does that mean? So what I can tell you is about a little bit more about that 60 part per billion level that's come up a couple times. And that's really about the whole hydrogen sulfide odor detection level. So California Air Resources Board, so that's state level information. They have said that the average threshold for people to detect hydrogen sulfide is in the 30 to 50 parts per billion range. Some people can have much more sensitive noses, so they can detect it at lower concentrations. But, you know, it's really that 60 is about acknowledging that detection range for when you smell it. And so if we're going to talk about other health impacts, we really would need somebody from the county or the state or a different public health official who can help us understand those other health effects. This rule, as far as I understand, for the 60 ppb, it's really about the public nuisance and the odor aspect of it. So anyway, I wish we had a full set of experts here who could help us unpack that more, because I understand how alarming it is to have some level out there and you don't know what does it mean for my health. And perhaps as an action item coming out of this, are the health agencies involved, including ours, including the state, the county, love the city of Richmond to join. Maybe we can have some conversations about creating some messaging. You know, to send an alert out without really what does it mean is kind of creates alarms. And so I think we can certainly join to figure out some plain language messaging around these kinds of alerts. Hopefully they don't happen again, but let's at least communicate more clearly.
Thank you. Councilmember Cepeda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for being here today. I know it was a very, very short notice. Stuff like this is never planned, and hopefully we don't have to plan one again. I want to seek to understand a little more about your agency, and just so that we all can level set there. What is the threshold for having a monitor on site? After how many calls do you bring somebody on site?
Yeah, let me ask Rainey Chang to join us. So Rainey oversees our monitoring and measurement program. So Rainey, I think the question is a little bit about emergency response, but maybe you could also just sort of talk a little bit about what's in existence there to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you for the question, council members. My name is Rainey Chang. I'm the Director of Meteorology and Measurement. And so we have different air monitoring data that we can look at already in the Richmond area. So that includes the monitors at the wastewater treatment plant. It includes monitoring stations that the air district operates. There's the van that we can send out to take measurements of hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide that Meredith mentioned, we can also look at data from some Chevron-operated monitoring as well. So when we did our analysis of the air quality impacts, we were looking at all of that together. And so in the case of when the van is sent out to add to the existing data that we already have, that's a conversation that's coordinated with the inspectors who are out there to figure out if there's additional data that would be helpful for investigating the situation.
So I'm not sure that I understood everything you just said. I don't know if it answered my question. So do you need to come out? I guess maybe it's another way of asking this question. Do you need to come out to do monitoring? Because I know that we're told call so that way we can get someone on site to monitor. But you're saying that you're getting data from other places. So does that mean you don't need to come out to monitor, or do you do need to come out to monitor? And if you do need to come out to monitor, after how many phone calls do you actually say, okay, there's something's going on, I have to go out to monitor?
In this case, there was a lot of data already indicating that there were odor issues, and there were a lot of monitors that were already operating, indicating that there were elevated levels of hydrogen sulfide. In terms of deciding when to go out, that's actually something that we are continuing to work on and iterate on with some conversations and oversight from our board of directors, as well in coordination with Contra Costa County, Solano County as well.
Yeah, and there could be on occasion an enforcement reason to go out, not as much about how people are impacted. There may be something on site that is a leak or something that we would send the enforcement folks with specific monitors to go look at. And so I think that's a different question, but I just want to make sure when you say monitor that you meant for the community rather than to understand the cause of a particular event.
Well, it's understanding the cause of the event is what I'm aiming at. So if somebody makes a phone call and then says, what is it that's happening? There's a smell, and there's a smell all around Point Richmond and down the Parkway, depending on how far you go, is who might be the lucky one, which agency, which company. So I want to understand. So if you make a phone call that I smell something on the Parkway and Parr Avenue, for example, or Parr Boulevard, are you going to go and monitor the sewage plant there? Are you just going to look to see if there's any data available on site? I want to correlate the impact of you going out to monitor, and I want to understand it, to there's just data. If there's just data, do you need to go out? What's the purpose of going out if there's already data?
Yeah, Jeff, do you want to?
Yeah, let me take this one. So in the Richmond area, we have 4 full-time assigned inspectors. We got 3 at Chevron and 1 in the general area of Richmond. So all those inspectors will coordinate with each other when we start receiving odor complaints. So on a single odor complaint, we already have staff in the area. They will receive that complaint, and they will either make a decision based on what is occurring at the time, either go to the facility to start an investigation or drive to where the complainant is to meet face-to-face with the complainant to observe the odor, the smell, or visible particulate fallout, whatever it may be, and then start tracking and tracing that back to a source. And once they find the source, they will start and initiate an investigation at the facility to determine what is the odor coming from, why is it occurring, can we deploy, the H2S monitoring van? We also look at fence line monitoring data around Chevron because they have a fence line monitoring system. And then we also have our own ambient air monitoring network in Richmond at 7th and Henley at the fire station. We have monitoring in downtown Point Richmond. We have our own monitors as well, as Chevron has some around the facility. So our inspectors will start looking at gathering all of that data to make a determination who is responsible for the odors. And I'll pause there to let you interject.
Thank you. So then, again, I'm not sure. And maybe I got it. Let me paraphrase, or let me tell you what I heard. So the threshold for how many or when you go out on site is still a pending number. It sounds like. It sounds like you're having communications about when somebody should be sent out. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, if we have a complaint, we're already out there in the community. We'll respond to that facility if they're alleging, say, the wastewater treatment plant. We will go there and conduct an investigation. Even if we don't detect an odor with the complainant in the community, we'll still go to that site and do patrols around to try to determine what it is. On a routine basis, we do inspections at these facilities, what we call routine compliance inspections. And so we are in the Richmond area inspecting different facilities throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you're getting these alarms, and for Veolia, we get them over email, if you've signed up for those alarms. So if you're getting these alarms, after how many do red flags kind of go up and says, okay, let's go drive around that particular area?
We're not typically monitoring because those analyzers, because those belong, I think, to either Veolia or the city of Richmond. So we would have to go online to look at those, and we don't do that on a regular basis. The inspectors do, unless we start getting odor complaints. Then we'll start looking at the monitors, or during their routine inspections, we'll look at the records for any of the 60 ppb triggers.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if there's 0 phone calls made, you may not necessarily go online to look to see if there was any alarms?
Correct, because we don't know that there's anything going on. We're not aware of it.
What can we do to be, and I thank you for being here today again, but what can we do to be more proactive? So someone may be monitoring, because you received 4 phone calls, somebody mentioned earlier, on December 5th. That's the following morning, but the alarms started going off the night before. So they started going off, and it wasn't one alarm, it was multiple alarms starting at around 10:30 at night. So I want to understand that from 10:30 the previous night till the very first phone call you got, like, what is it? How can we partner better with your agency that you can either help us be in the community to monitor our health and to make sure that the different companies, and not just Veolia, but the other ones that you also monitor, that there's nothing wrong going on in their plant. So I want to understand that lapse there.
I think the solution was already mentioned, which is the alignment with the Contra Costa warning system would really, I mean, we get those from the refineries, and even a level 1, wakes us all up, those of us who are the regulators. So if we can work together with Veolia to get their information on that site, I think that would really help.
Thank you. That's a great answer. That was going to be my next question. So yes, so there is definitely a missing piece that we don't have every agency set up to the same system. So for Veolia, you guys are an email that people have to sign up for. For Chevron stuff, for example, we use Chevron as an example. You sign up for Nixle. So people just have too many places to sign up for alerts when everything's impacting our health. So it'd be great if we can all go to one place. Also, Nixle allows a little bit more of information to be placed on there. So you can say level 1, as Councilmember Urbano was mentioning earlier. What does level 1 mean? Level 2, right? Please evacuate. Please don't evacuate. Just close your window. We're working on it. So that allows you to actually type something versus the current emails that you have now are just, if you're not a scientist, you're not going to know what it means. So thank you for that. From your point of view, how do you think we are better at being able to hold different agencies, different companies accountable? What tools that you have that we can potentially use for accountability?
Well, I mean, they have a permit to operate with the air district, and then with that has conditions in which they must operate under. And that is the accountability that we use as an enforcement tool to ensure they comply with air quality regulations. So we only have certain authorities that we can enforce.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you guys have the authority to revoke their permit to operate?
We don't have that authority directly in order to revoke a permit. That would have to go through a hearing process. And so there is a process, but the Air District itself doesn't have that authority. It'd have to go through a hearing board.
And after how many alerts, after how many incidents do we reach certain thresholds? The mayor just mentioned on a list here, just this incident had 30 alarms, but it's not the whole year, right? Throughout the whole year, maybe 100 and something plus? I didn't have enough fingers to add them that quickly. Over 150, thank you. And that was just this year. We're not done with this year yet. And this is a learning opportunity, not just for Veolia. Again, you're the first. You got lucky first, but you're not going to be the last. We want to use this as a learning opportunity for everyone else. After how many times do we then have the conversation of what happened next?
Yeah, well, and I will share that I think you were getting at just calling help. How do we know things? So having complaints come in and having us on site to issue the notice of violation is an important step in our process for accountability. So sometimes people wonder, does it help to call? It does help to get us there on site to know what's going on. And you all are really the ones on the ground there. So that is impactful. Once we're there and we issue the notice of violation, if you're a repeat offender kind of situation, that starts to get bundled. And those are conversations that we have with our legal folks. So I can't give you a specific answer, but those go into settlement. They go to the hearing board. There are a number of different abatement order type approaches. So there are things that happen once we have the notices of violation, and especially if there are a number of bundled ones together, there's different opportunities for higher levels of accountability if we find that there's things like negligence involved, or, so there's accidents and there's negligence, and those have different penalties that go with them.
Thank you. The other question, you had mentioned that you called the county health system or the county health because the call came in from the local school. Do you happen to know what actions they might have taken? Did they come out, or is it just a notification for them?
It's a notification that we have to notify them. It's dependent on how they want to react and if they wanted to come out to investigate or not. I don't know if they came out. As far as I know, they did not come out.
Okay, thank you. And earlier you were mentioning the magic number, which is 60 parts per billion. Do you happen to know what is the unhealthy number in this instance from what your agency looks at?
I don't think we have the expertise here to really dig into that. I'm sorry. I think if we had known, we would have made sure to get Contra Costa County here with us.
Yeah, no worries. And again, I thank you for being here, giving us your time today. I know it was very short notice. So I'll pause there for questions for you guys for now. Thank you.
Sorry. I have two council members who have further questions, but I think we should, if the council please, go to public comment. I do believe it's time to hear what the public has to say.
Will we get a chance?
Oh, yes. We will continue after public comment.
Thank you.
If you are joining us via Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. We will call the in-person speakers first, and then we'll move on to the speakers on Zoom. We have 4 in-person speakers. Those speakers are James Chezarek, Eddie Alderette Sellers, Philip Rosenthal, and Alfredo Angulo. Please move forward. James? James, please press the red button below the microphone. Over to your, yes, thank you. One moment, please. You may begin.
My name is James Chezarek, lifelong resident of Richmond. My family's been here 110 years. Anyway, I'll explain what I have to go through. I work on Canal Boulevard in very close proximity to the plant. So just imagine a cauldron of excrement being stirred with the road flare. That's what I get to smell. When I go out in the yard, I smelled it last week, but there's been much more worse incidents than that. I mean, a few months ago, you could smell the stench on the 580 freeway. But the main reason, when I say this, imagine going to your office at 8 in the morning and you open the door and it hits you from the night before. My motivation to be here is for my elderly mother, who has been fighting this issue for, I'd say, 15 years, calling anybody that'll listen, and just it doesn't go anywhere. You know, we've had issues before where there's been mosquitoes breeding in the vats. You know, it's just ridiculous, and that's about all I have to say.
Thank you. The next speaker is Eddie Sellers. Eddie Alderette Sellers. You may begin.
Hello, Council. Thank you so much for having this meeting. It has been long coming, and I really appreciate you taking this seriously. I came in here angry about living in the smell of poo. I am walking out of here appalled at the grossly negligent, gross incompetence that I have just heard from Veolia. We are not experts, but tonight it made clear that Veolia is operating in a vacuum with no respect for you, no respect for us, no respect for Richmond students, no respect for Richmond residents. They haven't had an outlet to communicate with the neighborhood. They have had this contract for 21 years, and they haven't had any way to communicate with the neighborhood. Why did it require Councilmember Willis to suggest to them that maybe they want to connect with neighbors, maybe they want to actually communicate with the community? You're telling them how to do their job after 21 years of holding this contract? Why did it require Bay Area Air Quality Management to come out and make this complaint? If they hadn't, would we have even known that it was them that was making the stink? Mayor Martinez, you made it clear how many times they have been violating the 60 parts per million. Why is this time the difference? It's because we reported on it. They know when they're violating. We don't know until somebody complains. That's not right. I'm tired of being gaslit and told that this isn't affecting my health.
Expired. Thank you.
They gaslit you tonight here.
Your time
Don't
has
let them
expired.
keep doing it.
The next speaker is Philip Rosenthal.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Caesar for making this meeting happen. And I'd like to thank Mary Phelps, who is a dedicated public servant who has been on this for decades. I would also like to tell the council respectfully, there is not a mystery as how to hold this major billion-dollar infrastructure corporation responsible for their actions. Simply don't renew the contract. Respectfully, Mayor Martinez, Gail, who's not here, Melvin, they voted to extend this contract 18 years after we've been reporting this project. The issue is not that we need reporting and we need communication. The issue is we need not to have hundreds and hundreds of incidents of these toxic polluting of our neighborhood. I'm going to leave my phone number with the crew from Veolia and invite them to come into my house, and I'll leave my scarf so you can smell the stench that is inside my home. We don't need you to send us a notice to say don't have a children's birthday party. The only possible solution is that we have to leave our homes. The only thing that is worse than the stench of Veolia's plant is that this multi-billion-dollar corporation, whose job and expertise it is to run this, opens their mouth and more sewage comes out. The stench of this BS that we've heard in this chamber today, while you pretend that your company can't possibly figure out how to run a plant, is just appalling. If this was Beverly Hills, you wouldn't be sending this sulfide into the elementary school directly adjacent to your
Your time has
plant.
expired.
Here's the number. Come by my house. Clean
The next
lot.
speaker is Alfredo Angulo.
Hello, my name is Alfredo Angulo. I am the Just Transition Campaign Manager for Communities for a Better Environment. I will be making a statement on behalf of our Richmond team and in honor of our community members and in solidarity with the plant workers that take orders from the executives we've heard from today. Thank you, Council, for calling this special meeting. Like you all, we are extremely concerned by the uptick of air quality-related incidents over the last 2 weeks. We know that Richmond's population is already oversensitive to air quality-related health issues as a legacy of over a century of previous city governments putting the needs and wants of corporations ahead of our community's health. We demand that the city do its job and hold companies like these accountable for their ends of the bargain. The incident is nothing new to anyone who has been following air quality issues in Richmond. Veolia has a pattern of disregarding the safety of our community and breaching their contractual obligations to stay below certain emission limits. We know this through Backman's continued documentation of violation notices, as well as the community's own lived experiences that have been shared with us. We want to see the city hold Veolia accountable for breaching their contract over and over again. On the topic of air pollution, the lack of transparency around Chevron's recent flaring is also disappointing to see. We were told that no action was to be taken by the community, while at the same time, huge plumes of black smoke covered the city. Veolia, Chevron, Backmid, our city, county elected officials need to be honest with the community about health hazard posed by industrial incidents like these. We need elected officials to communicate with their constituents and not just pass on language that these corporations drafted. I know each of you personally, so know that I say this with love and respect. Why are they not being penalized for putting our community in danger? The reason we have penalties and enforcement mechanisms is to prevent these things from happening. Why have them in the first place if we're just going to let them do whatever they want without consequence? As elected officials, you owe it to the community that elected you to protect us. Before this happens, thank you for your leadership. Please keep it going.
And now we'll move on to our speakers that have joined us via Zoom. You will each have 2 minutes. We currently have 7 speakers. Ursula?
The speakers are Jenny Balisle, Maureen DeCombe, Shannon, Nancy Peace, Lisa Johnson, Marisol Cantu, and Jane Corrent. When your name is called, please be prepared to speak. Jenny Balisle.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for calling this emergency air quality meeting. And Richmond residents have endured this enough for many decades. And if you look at the data, according to UCSF, the prevalence of asthma in California is 13%, and here in Richmond, it's 25%. And I just would like to bring up the 1127 Chevron incident. I received a text long after that incident started, even though there's black smoke pouring over our hill, and my partner did not receive one. Our home purple air sensor showed readings of 100 plus, so when any of these incidents happen, I check our purple air sensor. And during that Chevron incident, next morning there was black dust on cars and the smoke smell lingered. But I bring this up because I have asthma. I have severe allergic reactions to chemicals. So when any chemicals are released in Richmond's air, my body immediately responds. And, you know, here we go again with Veolia, with the recent spikes in the hydrogen sulfide. And we all know, and we've all discussed this tonight, it's a disgusting smell and the serious health impacts continue. And so if new work is being done, like they've talked about tonight, we need to know in advance and how many Veolia workers actually live in our community. And if you open the window right now, the air smells right now, and this is our home. And being able to breathe clean air is essential to our community. And the combo between Chevron and Viola is dangerous. So I just like to say, like, as myself, imagine having asthma, mixing that with the bad air quality and the chemicals and navigating through the pandemic. And I know I'm not the only one. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Maureen DeCombe.
Hi, sorry it took me a minute to unmute. Maureen DeCombe, I live in Point Richmond, and I have observed these issues with Veolia since we moved here in 2007. And there is some referral to the old days when there was some kind of major florid set of incidences. And I got involved in activism around the wastewater treatment plant at that point. And it was at that time that the community advocated for the monitors. And I do want to say that the monitors have made an enormous difference in the communications from the city and from Veolia. We have been told in the past, basically, don't believe your lying noses. The smell is coming from a trash can down in the park where people put their dog poo. So, at risk of maybe making some people mad at me, I want to say that I see a difference in the city's response. I see some informed council members asking good questions. And I also see Veolia admitting that there's a problem, which did not happen before. So I believe we have a huge opportunity to work together, and I am optimistic that we can find a way. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Shannon.
Hi, my name is Shannon McClelland, and I do want to say thank you for having this council meeting. I appreciate it. I live in Point Richmond, and I smell awful things a lot when I walk out my front door, and it's really depressing because I love living here and I love having my home, and I want to enjoy walking my dog and feel safe doing that, and I want to enjoy walking my daughter to elementary school at Washington and not worry about what she's breathing in while she's playing at the playground. And I appreciate that there's the hydrogen sulfide alarms, and it's good to have something to monitor things with. And I've noticed headaches that I have when those peak, but the smells that we smell are not just when those peak. And I would just say the word nuisance kept getting used. And I just feel like it's a lot more than a nuisance to walk out your door and have it smell like a toilet all the time. A lot more than is fair. So thank you very much. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The next speaker is Nancy Peace.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. My name is Nancy P. Aguirre. I am resident of Point Richmond, newly moved here in 2017. I do appreciate council members' questions and the pushback. I do not appreciate the executives presenting today because I feel that you all could be doing a much better job of talking to the community and letting the community know what is going on. You said you knew about this project, all of this happening several weeks in advance, yet no one seems to know anything until we all smelled it. And I have to say, I've had a smell outside my home here in Point Richmond near Washington Elementary for a whole month or so. So it's not just, oh, because it peaked. And it's more than a nuisance. I should not have to call Backman every single night I smell something. I'm tired. I don't want to have to spend my time on the phone trying to get online, trying to put another complaint in. The household is tired. We're brown and black people, and we are tired of having to wait for someone to make a difference. So I want you to put your money where your mouth is, from everyone involved, from our regulatory agencies, Backman. I love y'all, but I'm looking at you. From our city council, we need something. We need money back for all of this headache, nuisance, health issue. I'm done. I'm not even a long time Richmond resident. I'm so sorry for everyone else. So
Your time
thank
has
you for your
expired.
time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lisa Johnson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, council and staff. Thank you, Councilmember Cepeda. Thank you for finally acting on our pleas. Thank you, council. Thank you also to Mary Phelps, our honey badger. Please give her a holiday bonus. While there is noxious stench in the plant, the larger rotten egg is Veolia themselves. In July of 2008, the city sent Veolia a demand letter alleging that a forensic audit and legal review had determined they had charged and been paid for work that was not completed and consistently and improperly overbilled. The demand letter called for Veolia to pay the city $26 million to settle their claims. For some reason, the then city manager, attorney, and council in 2008 shockingly settled for less than $2 million or less than 7%. Why? In June of 2020, the City Council approved to increase sewer rates for 67% of property owners, predominantly in Black and Brown communities, by another 37%. 1 month later, in July, I pulled 2 suspect consent calendar items that were being coded as makeup work for legal reasons, but which also kept the public completely in the dark. In short, Veolia and a subcontractor had once again charged us for work they claimed was completed, when in fact CCTV footage demonstrated that 14 of 33, or 42% of lines, had not been repaired. It is clear that at least some of the fraud that Veolia was alleged to have committed in 2008 and settled for less than $2 million was still happening a decade later. In 2018, the city renegotiated their contract and extended it 5 more years to 2027. In exchange, what did Veolia do? They dropped their extortionist 24% contract rate down to an industry standard of 16.5%. With that contract extension in place, then what did they do? They screwed us again, charging us for work they hadn't completed, apparently to make up for that 7.5% rate decrease. Respectively, Veolia needs to be held to account, but so too does the city council and the city attorney. Please represent us.
Thank you. Your time has expired. The next speaker is Marisol Cantú.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Marisol Cantú, third generation Richmond resident. I bike through Point Richmond 4 to 5 times a day, although I'm a District 6 resident. I also have friends and family and beloveds out in Point Richmond. And also I feel being left out of the conversation is North Richmond and Iron Triangle and Atchison Village. A lot of the winds tend to actually bring in and move that smell into some of our predominantly Black and Brown areas in the city. I also am an AB 617, which is the Assembly Bill for a Path to Clean Air Community Steering Committee member. And I want to ensure, as we have this conversation, that the community is not being left out. There is actually a path forward in holding Veolia accountable and making sure that every move they make is fully transparent, in particular, improving our air quality. Right now, we're currently living in dangerously risky situation in our city. And through the AB 617 plan, which we're hoping to present in the near future,
these conversations are exactly what community steering committee members are looking to be a part of, including having a inner agency conversation about the community warning systems and lowering the threshold so more community members are actually being alerted and changing the language. Please do not leave us out of that conversation. Also, we're looking at standardizing inspection protocols and having tighter investigations that actually have workers and communities at the table. So I really, really ask that as we hold Veolia accountable, the community is centered, and there are—
Thank you. Your time has expired. The next speaker is Jane Corrent.
Good evening, everyone. I confess that I had never even heard of Veolia or knew anything about it, but as someone who swims at the Richmond Plunge 3 days a week, I did kind of wonder about a smell that frequently came in through the open windows. They keep the place very well ventilated, and especially since COVID. And so we have people who are swimming and not just, breathing heavily, many of them elderly, as they exercise. And I have looked around. I know that the elementary school is right there. Although I am not a resident of Point Richmond, I'm very, very concerned about this. I appreciate Council Member Cepeda calling this meeting. I appreciate the council who I worked hard, many of you, to elect. And I truly hope that after hearing from the community this evening and hearing explanations that are obviously very unsatisfactory from the company, that the next round of I don't know when this contract gets renewed, but it seems to me that much more has got to be in that contract requiring them not only to report, but requiring them to improve their methods. So thank you very much. I learned a great deal just listening to everyone tonight. I'm very thankful that I can count on this particular city council to put the community first and to hold this corporation accountable to our community. Again, thank you very much. Jane Courant. I'm in Gail's district, but as I say, I spend a good deal of time
Thank you.
down
Your
on the
time has
point.
expired. And that was our last public speaker.
Would you check to make sure that there were any speakers who were unable to raise their hand at the time?
There was a speaker that was brought to my attention that the hand was raised after I called the names, after the beginning of the public comment period.
Well, if it's only one, may we hear that individual?
Well, now there's two.
Okay. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. I'm going to stick with 2.
Okay, so I will call Cecil Calban. Please begin.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm a longtime resident of Richmond. I've worked in the industries that produce byproduct chemical. When we're talking about hydrogen sulfide gas, my head about exploded when they're saying they're releasing this amounts of gas into the neighborhoods, and we're smelling it. This is totally unacceptable. I listened to the Veolia executives and engineers talk about all of the procedures that they put in place and all of the things that they had planned for, but they didn't plan for some things because they were surprised when certain things happened. I worked in the industries, as I said before. I worked as an OSHA regulatory trainer in industries. And when I trained and wrote policies and procedures, we always worked to plan for the unexpected, because guess what? It's going to come. When I listen to these executives from Veolia and they're talking about all the things that happened that they didn't see or didn't plan for, didn't understand were coming, it is totally unacceptable. A company that is reacting like this to the community is not a company that I have faith in that is going to protect and serve this community. And I think that the city of Richmond needs to find an alternative for servicing our community in a safe and sane manner. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joy Diaz Noriega. You may begin.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Joy. I am an educator and organizer in West Contra Costa Unified School District in support of community advocating for transparency and accountability to ensure that people and the land are protected. I work at an elementary school and our site was impacted, but no one said anything or knew what was happening. So we went through a full day of school without ensuring our students and school site community were safe, and this is not okay. I urge you all to center our community and to ensure all communication is accessible and available for all children, youth, and adults and elders to understand in multiple languages through visuals and graphics, through conversations or spaces where students can learn how to self-assess for themselves when adult allies or folks in the community don't know how to do it with them or aren't able to do this for them. I'd also like to see genuine relationships with school districts and teachers so that we, again, as a community, can hold each other accountable and keep each other safe. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was our last public speaker.
Thank you so much. I have two council members who want to speak, but I'd like to exercise my privilege and ask a few questions, if that's okay. Okay, I wanted to address some of the statements that you made in the statement to Richmond on the order issues that you sent out December 6th. There were, I mean, I have a lot of questions, but two specifically. One of them says, Veolia has worked closely with City of Richmond officials and regional regulatory bodies to coordinate the complex process of rebuilding a wastewater treatment plant while it continues operating. And we regret that this work may have inadvertently created an order issue for neighbors in the area. Now, I understand that you have two separate divisions. One that is let's see, what is it? It's a maintenance and operation, and the other one that has to do with engineering, delivering capital improvements. So what sort of communication goes on between those two units? And how could communication have prevented this issue?
I think one of the things that we referenced earlier we can improve on, we do have weekly meetings. Some cases, as we get closer to projects, they have daily meetings. But I think we need to have, again, more transparency in pushing back. In some cases, it has been an attempt to get the construction completed before the rains, right? To protect the capacities to not violate the MPDS permit, but in this case, it actually precipitated violating a BAA QMD permit, right? There are a lot of different components to this, but really pushing back and saying, we have to be clear on all fronts that this can't happen without certain factors in place. And improving that transparency even between the two groups goes a long way towards making sure that we can be accountable to the community and give you the notice that we've promised to do. And we've already started changing those procedures by looking forward to each of those activities, identifying from an operational perspective where those concerns may lie, and saying this cannot happen in this order unless these things occur first.
Thank you. Well, even after the December 6th incidents, yesterday I was coming back from the port and I smelled odors coming from Veolia. So that was yesterday, and I understand that there were reports today. So obviously, something's right now. So you say that you work closely with City of Richmond officials. Who are those officials that you worked with?
We have regular meetings with the Public Works Department to make sure that they're involved and understand the activities that are going on, to make sure that we're trying to coordinate those with, one, the budgeting aspects, making sure that we're aligning with the priorities and making sure that, again, we're involving them in some of the things that may be changing. We also, I believe, have, on top of the just bi-weekly meetings, we also have weekly meetings. And then we have individual reports that get sent out, monthly reports that get covered.
Okay, so when you have an incident, who do you send the incident reports out to, or the incident warnings?
Typically, Mary Phelps would be the contact for emergencies, whether it's an SSO, whether it's an odor issue. That is the number that we've been given for the 24/7 access.
Okay, well, I would like to recommend to you that when an issue like this happens, we need redundancy, and the people who should be included with Mary Phelps is the city manager, the city mayor, the legal department, and all council members, especially Councilmember Cepeda, since he is the council member for that district. This should be CC'd to all of us so that we're all on the same page, because I found out about it from residents. And it really makes us look bad when we get information from our residents, information that we should have had already. So now, the other thing, you say we will review our processes with the city. So you have a regular operating procedures that you've shared with the city? Is that true?
We have regular operating procedures that are in place at the facility for how those processes are being run. And yes, the city can come at any point in time and review any of those procedures.
Okay, so I understand that there has been difficulty in getting information from Veolia. It's like pulling teeth. Anytime we want information, we have to demand and demand and demand until it finally comes to us. Now, I don't know if that's how you perceive it, but that's how it's perceived on this end. So in the future, what I want from you is utter transparency, and I want information given to the city without any dance that we have to do in order to receive what is ours, since it is our plant, we're paying you, it is our information. And the other thing is, actually, I'll save that for later. I'll give the floor to Councilmember Robinson.
Yeah, I actually would like to make a motion, but I would like to wait until other people have other comments.
I have questions.
Go ahead. All right.
So, most of my questions are actually for the Air District. Oh, thank you. So you said you had your city coordination weekly meetings with the Public Works, but I remember it was Veolia that had a road closure without notifying the city a while ago, right? Maybe not. Anyway, so most of my questions are actually for the Air District. Are they still here?
I don't know, but I did want to do a point of information. The road closure was the Ford who does construction for Veolia, and this is one of the issues that I was talking about between communication of the capital improvement and the operations.
Yeah. So I was right.
Yeah. So
thank you. So, can I ask questions? Are they on Zoom still? Bay Area Air Quality.
Yes, I think, yes, we're here. Sorry, just getting my video back on, and I see Rainey's on. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming, first of all, and I would like to thank the city staff for inviting you. It's very important. I have some questions, and you can answer quickly. What is a notice of violation? What is the outcome? What are the implications?
Jeff, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I'll take that one. When the Air District issues a notice of violation, the Inspection and Compliance and Enforcement Division does an investigation and has its findings that documents how the violation occurred, corrective actions. And once that violation is complete, it's reviewed by the management and then sent on to our legal division for a settlement.
Settlement with your district or with the city, or both?
It's with our air district. We have a legal team that will settle all of our violations. And typically the penalties that we receive as a result of those violations goes into our general fund.
Okay,
And it would
thank
be
you.
against whoever, has committed the violation.
Excellent, thank you. So there were talks about different permits and regulations. So if you could just briefly explain what agencies oversee air quality, are in charge of providing permits or ordinances?
Well, for permits, for local area permits, that would be the air district. So that's, I can stop there for, if that's what you're asking about.
That's like operation permit, that if it would be violated, there's a notice of violation?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And what regulations would Veolia be subject to?
The permit to operate typically will list out all the conditions in which they must operate under. Then we also have our general public nuisance regulation, Regulation 1, which covers odors and nuisances.
So beyond the district, are there other agencies? Or in addition?
Well, the air district is overseen by the state of California, California Air Resources Board, and then also the federal EPA also has oversight over the air district, but they do not issue the local air permits. That's our authority and jurisdiction.
Thank you. And what is the role of the county health department?
The county health department has a Cooper program where they do hazardous waste type inspections. They have incident response procedures, and they also are responsible for the community warning system with the Contra Costa Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
And our public health messaging often comes from, they have the public county health officials.
Okay.
So like, you may remember during COVID, all the mask kind of requirements and that kind of stuff, you would check with your local county would have those types of messages.
Got it. Thank you. So if I understand correctly, that magic number of 60 part per billion comes from the threshold for the sensors. I wonder that we only have 2 sensors, north and east. If you believe that there should be more sensors at different heights, I don't know what the height of current sensors are. If you have any suggestions, I don't expect an answer now, but I expect the city and Veolia to work with you to hopefully improve that in the future. That's important. And I wonder who decides whether we should have a community warning system involved and people be notified through cell phone if they're in the area versus an email, which is very limited access, because H2S is an asset, and I don't think if there have been enough tests to see the health effect. I mean, everything is a guesstimate about the level of impact on the health. And the residents are telling us that they have been heavily impacted. So which agency is in charge of deciding how the alerts would be issued? Or is there an agency?
Contra Costa County has the community warning system, and is responsible for running that system with the sheriff's department. And county hazmat typically are the ones that would respond and investigate those different levels.
I understand that. I'm familiar with county community warning system. I wonder if there is any agency who obligates an industry to be connected to community warning system. Like refineries can issue community warning system themselves to minimize the delay. But this company doesn't even have access to community warning system. So is there a procedure in place to obligate specific industries to do that, or should the city take action?
Well, there is, Contra Costa County has a notification policy for the community warning system. The major chemical companies and refineries all have what we call computer terminals at their facilities, so they can actually initiate the warnings, those different levels. Facilities that don't have those terminals typically would have to call the county to initiate those warning levels. And
Jeff, I wonder if you could help us understand those who participate in the community warning system, are they obligated, or is that voluntary, or how is that negotiated? If you know, and I recognize we're talking about a system that we don't run.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the policy for the Contra Costa County. I don't know offhand.
Or we could connect with, I mean, I think all of us connecting with Contra Costa County would be a good thing, so that we understand how all these connections work and how you, I think what I'm hearing is there would like to be not just a voluntary kind of association with Veolia and the community warning system, but something that compels entities such as Veolia to participate.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that that follow-up, and I'll ask our city manager to do the follow-up in that regards. So in terms of
Councilmember Bonnet, Mayor, if I may, through the chair.
Yes, you may.
So Councilmember Bonnet, I actually think that BACMED's suggestion was very helpful, and I think we should coordinate with them and with Contra Costa County, because your points are well made, but I think having BACMED as the regulatory agency assisting would be most helpful, because ultimately it does roll up to the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Yeah, let's follow up on that. Thank you very much. So the regulatory process, does it come through your district, or is it the county health department if we want to have more strict regulations?
I'm not sure, honestly. If we could have the follow-up. In terms of requiring someone to participate in a county warning system, like that kind of warning system, there's not a regulation I'm aware of, although as part of penalties and agreements that come out of violations, there's room in there for that kind of outcome, but that's not a regulation that I know of. So, but I'd like for us to follow up as we kind of continue down this path of talking about Contra Costa's warning system.
I appreciate that, because I know for refineries, for example, CARE is involved. Contra Costa County Community Awareness and Emergency Response, to make sure that refineries follow safety protocols that apparently Veolia didn't have, or operation protocols didn't have any in place. That's why this happened. And they're also in touch with the Chemical Safety Board. Apparently, there's no connection here with other industries, and it seems like it's only for the refineries. So we would like to expand them in the city of Richmond, because this incident shows clearly that it's needed. So we'll be following up with you through our city manager, with the county health department, community warning system, CARE, to make sure that the community warning system works properly, not only for refineries, but any industrial plant that may affect the community. Thank you very much. And is it time for comments too?
We have been making them.
Huh?
We have been making them. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that we have Moxion, which has industrial grade power backup. You may want to.
Excuse me. It has to be to this item.
It is, but
Oh.
because they say PG&E failed.
Oh, okay, I understand.
So they could have backup.
I understand. Mhm.
It's not an advertisement for
No, no.
Marcia. It's just
Yes, no,
letting him know there are possibilities, you know.
yes, go ahead.
Say yes for important. And also, none of the residents mentioned it, but for friends and family, I'm a realtor. And I was just imagining if somebody's selling their home, they have an open house, or they have potential buyers coming in, this is disastrous. It also impacts their pockets deeply. So it's not just the health impact, it's also financial impact on the people. Needs to be taken seriously. And I'm sure there are other things we haven't thought of, but yeah, thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman, on my list, I have Robinson, Willis, then Cepeda.
So I am going to make a motion and we can still have comments afterwards. My motion is because of what I heard tonight. After hearing about hundreds of incidents at the facility, just in this year alone, delayed and incomplete critical maintenance of the storm drain system, and now claims of fraud in historic and current, I believe the council has an obligation to act. I would like to direct city staff and specifically the city attorney's office to, one, enforce the contract wherever possible, however possible. Two, explore potential grounds for breach of contract. Three, investigate the claims of fraudulent charges. And four, look into the possibility of starting a process to transition to a more responsible provider. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
May I make some friendly amendments? And also to ensure that Veolia, you can submit a technical report to the city by January 8th, if that's doable there, that outlines the reasons for the odor event, why the odor issues took place, what events, what went wrong, and for Veolia to provide assurances that they will take corrective steps to permanently resolve the odor issues. And not just the events from last week, but if we can look back at least the last year. The report should also include proposals regarding advance notice of activities that may result in odor release, including physical postings, communication with city staff and residents regarding alerts, and procedures for addressing odor release. Once staff evaluates the report, council requests an item for the January 23rd meeting to discuss the report with Veolia and to invite other relevant agencies, including the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and the County Health, to join in the January 23rd meeting. Would that be amenable?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
May I add-
it's Willis's turn?
So he's second.
No, I was seconding,
Okay.
and then he was
Oh,
making a friendly amendment, so I
Right,
was just
uh-huh.
accepting
Okay.
it now.
So, yes, and then I have another amendment I'd like to add, so.
Thank you. My friendly amendment is to direct the city staff to work with the county health department to provide the possibility of using community warning system for Veolia as well. Thank you.
Mayor, can I please clarify
Yes.
that the community warning system is with Contra Costa County? And so if that would be acceptable instead of Contra Costa Health, that would be helpful for the conversations?
Thank you.
And then from comments, it sounds as if we haven't had a forensic audit since 2008. That's quite a long time ago. I believe that in doing the work that Robinson suggested, that a forensic audit is necessary at this time.
I accept that amendment as well.
Okay. So,
I think we're going to have more questions.
yeah,
From
so if there's more comments at this point, Now's the time, yes.
So now that the motion is out there, I want to ask a couple more questions, and I want to start off with, first, again, thank you, both of you, for being in the spotlight here, in the hot seat. There's a lot of other individuals who join you, and for those at home, I want to make sure that and those from on Zoom, they know that who else is here with you, because we're going to hold all of you responsible, so that way everyone at home knows. Will you mind introducing who is here with you today?
I have a question too.
Sorry, thank you. In the front, we have Scott Pearsall. He is legal counsel for the West. Right behind him, Rodrigo. He works for the CPM group for CV on site, daily basis. Next to him, we have Omar. He is an operations manager, again, on site every day. Monty Dill, project manager, general manager for the on-site Richmond every day. And next to him, we have Robert Kuda, who is our new president for the West. I think week 2. So he is brand new and is just coming to Richmond for the first time. So he's being introduced.
Welcome to Richmond.
Welcome. With that there, speaking of staffing levels, I know that I asked this last week as well. Can you share with us you said full-time or throughout the whole day, how many individuals are at the plant 24/7?
24/7? Zero. This is not a 24/7 facility that is manned. It was contracted as a 7-day-a-week, 1 shift per day, every day, including holidays. On off shifts, it is monitored with an on-call operator who is available by phone to respond to any emergencies. The differentiator on that is during the wet season, we have several crews, especially out in the storm system, the sanitary collection system, due to overflows and things like that are on call, and in many cases will be staffing the plant during anticipated heavy rains. So
Thank you for confirming that. And I think you know where I'm going because I asked this question last week again. The alarms seem to happen predominantly after hours and on weekends and heavily on holidays. And it might be because at those times is when there's more people at home flushing toilets. So, and as you're shaking your head, I'm agreeing, you're agreeing with me, right? That's when we're more at home.
It does change throughout the day as far as how much is being pushed through the system. There is a significant difference between what's coming in the morning versus what comes in, in the afternoons and evenings when everyone's home.
So hence my concern. From our call last week, your staff leaves at around 3:30. This alarm went off at around 5 o'clock.
Yes.
So from 3:30 to PM time somewhere or other, there's nobody there to tell us that a machine lost power. There's no one there physically to put it back up. It might take, as you mentioned earlier, till the next morning. In your earlier comments, you said that you weren't able to get a hold of a contractor until the following morning. Can you tell us which morning that was? Was that Tuesday morning or was that Wednesday morning?
Monty, do you recall? Was it Wednesday morning?
When we had to contact the vendor for Payless. Oh, no, it was Tuesday morning.
So Tuesday morning. Okay. Better answer than Wednesday because the alarm started on Monday. Okay. But in case of an emergency, earthquake, where you can have flooding, my concern is that there's nobody nearby to attend to the plant. And it's a health concern. The West County Wastewater District, when I was a director there, we make sure that we had someone at the plant 24/7 because anything could happen. And if the plant stops servicing our sewage comes back in, or worse, it goes into our streets, or even worse, it goes into, it's not even worse, it's not even a word, but even worse, it goes into the bay. Right? And it just, catastrophic stuff can happen from there. So from 3:30 till 7 a.m. the following morning, there's not a human there, and we're relying on computers, which we know could lose power. So that is a concern that I would like addressed. And if in this multi-million-dollar contract, we can't find enough money in there to pay for a staff member to come in overnight, we need to figure that out. In this multi-million-dollar contract, did we set aside some money in there to address odors? It's a $42 million contract to redo the plant there. How much of that is going towards mitigating odors? So I would like that answered, please. And I would also like to see what you do in other locations. You are a worldwide company. What are you doing in other agencies and other locations that you can mirror in Richmond to give us that better service that we are now demanding? And just as a reminder, and the mayor mentioned it, this plant belongs to the people of Richmond. And I want to remind, because when I first got elected, I asked for a tour. And we were told the plant was not ready yet to give us tours. And it almost seemed as if you didn't want us there. And I know there's construction. So I'm going to equate your construction with the West County Wastewater District's construction. I walked that plant many times. They're both wastewater systems. And they're both in my district. So you cannot prohibit us from walking. You can tell us, don't go into this location because something could fall. But giving us access to our own plant is something that we're going to be requiring. And I just want you again to know that the data, as the mayor mentioned, belongs to the people. And that so it has to be treated as that. You're managing it for us, but it belongs to us. So with that, I'll pause there. I'm sure other council members might have other questions. And actually, I'm sorry, one last thing. I would love also to have a quarterly report here at City Council. I think that was in the contract to have, I believe it's either monthly reports. But the monthly reports have never made it onto our agenda for many years because our staff has found discrepancies. And they don't feel that it's good enough to give us that information without digging into the data itself before it gets presented. Because once it's presented, if it's just a report on the staff agenda, there's no context to it, it becomes more factual than anything. So we would like for you to come here. So an open invitation, you can come out more often, but at least quarterly to give us that information.
Yeah, point of information. We were receiving them monthly, and as Councilmember Cepeda said, there were numerous discrepancies, and we at one point thought that in accepting them, we might be telling the public that we were accepting the information. So at that point, we started publishing your reports with a disclaimer. And it's sad that one institution has to put a disclaimer on information that it's getting. But we would like in the future to be able to receive reports that don't require disclaimers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me?
Yes.
Thank you. So before, I have a specific question. Before that, just piggybacking on some concerns. Number one, when you have the report, please add a storm drain to the report. Number two, it'd be nice to have a tour, group tour of the facility. Actually, East Bay Mud, I know they have tour for the public as well, once in a while. Let's open up and see what's in there. The refineries, actually, I'm concerned about public safety. So at a meeting, Rodeo Fire Department was saying there was a fire over there. They fire department, nobody was at the site. So the fact that there is nobody at your site in the evening reminds me of the incident. They had to get in, the keys didn't work. Once they get in, there's no instruction about how to shut off things. So I just want to make sure your site is accessible to the fire department if emergency response is needed, and there are clear instruction on how to stop whatever may go wrong. Make sure you do that. And my specific question is, I've been asking Veolia through Mary Phelps for clearing storm drains for a whole year. Residents sent pictures, maps, everything. When is it going to get done? And I would like to check personally with you directly to make sure it's done. Just give me a date.
I will look into it, honestly. I don't know specifically which location you're talking about, or if you can tell me. I will
Mayor, if I
absolutely look
may,
into it.
through you as the chair, Councilmember
Yes.
Bonnet, what would be helpful, I think, for the council and the community to understand is there a specific schedule that Veolia follows to address the storm drains throughout the city, and can it be made publicly available?
The storm drains right now have been on an as-needed basis, so when people call and say there is a challenge, then they will respond, they will clean. There are some challenges with some of the equipment that we have being able to do certain things. But certainly, we can, again, look into, we have a very specific schedule on the sanitary side that is very clearly lined out, as well as hotspots. On the storm side, I will look into what that schedule looks like and get back to you.
It's the hills in El Sobrante Hills, Greenbrier neighborhood, El Sobrante Hills neighborhood, Rain Cloud Park. They're all clogged by mud and vegetation growing in it. Nobody has touched them for years. And we've been asking for a whole year. So I would appreciate your attention to that, immediate attention before the rain starts. Thank you. I'm done.
I would like to add that it should be better than as needed, because there's a lot of as needed that aren't reported. So
True,
you
it
should
should be regular.
You
Thank
should
you.
have a schedule that you use to make sure that all of the lines are clean without having to have someone notice. I'm interested if legal has any comments to make.
Well, I was just trying to figure out a way to communicate kind of the timing of your motion, because specifically my understanding, and I wasn't part of this meeting, is that Dave Alshire, who's the city attorney, and Veolia, as well as Councilmember Zepeda, met last week, in which they agreed to provide a report, a comprehensive report of this incident. And so my understanding is that kind of this is step one in the process. And step two would be that Veolia would come back in mid to late January with the report, and hopefully with, as Councilmember Zepeda suggested, other, BACMed as well as County Health to kind of talk about next steps, ways to address the odor, that this won't happen again. When we get into breach of contract issues and enforcement actions, I think we, at this point, my recommendation would be to focus on the odor violations, and then go, after we have the report, and then go to your recommendation. Obviously, it's up to you, but I think in terms of steps, my recommendation would be to receive the report, address, for staff and legal to look at the report and figure out kind of recommendations for next steps. And I understand, where you're coming from, but I think that in terms of timing, it should be my recommendation would be for the report, and then, at that January 23rd meeting, you could, make additional recommendations then, once we have kind of the more information.
Yeah, so I'd like to say thank you for your recommendation. I appreciate it. I understand why you would give such a recommendation. I do feel that the steps that are being taken now were taken by a single council member and not the whole council. So there wasn't a council directive to do those particular steps. This was our opportunity to talk through some of the issues, and I'd like to continue to move the motion forward because I feel like this is not about this single incident, but rather about a history of hundreds of incidents, reports of fraud, reports of inaccurate reports, reports of lack of maintenance. It's crazy to me that we have to tell our multi-million-dollar provider that they should have a maintenance plan. Why do we have to tell them that? A calendar for maintenance of storm drains, and that they shouldn't be as somebody reports. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like we've heard from the community tonight. People have lived here for decades, and they've heard it all over and over and over and over again. So now let's wait till January and hear it some more. I feel like we.
Councilmember
Okay.
Bonner,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
Councilmember Zepeda,
Yes.
and Mayor Martinez.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
Okay.
Well, with that,
Meeting adjourned.
so just a point of clarification, the date for the report was January 8th?
I have January, yes, it looks like it's January 8th.
Okay.
4th, is it 4th or 8th? Yeah, I think, yeah,
4th or 8th?
8th.
8th,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
January 8th.
Well, with that, this council meeting is done, adjourned.